Chapter 1650. Seeing Yi Tian like that, Yi suddenly felt sorry for her. No matter how much Yi Tian had gone overboard or treated her badly, at the end of the day, she was still her mother. Yi looked at Yi Tian and said, "There isn't much money left. I can help you pay it back." Yi Tian looked at Yi. There wasn't the surprise or gratitude on her face that Li Jinnan had imagined. Instead, it was a very ugly expression. It was as if someone had knocked over a jar of condiments. All sorts of emotions intertwined. It looked very complicated. When Yi saw Yi Tian's expression, she suddenly felt that she had said the wrong thing. Yi didn't know how Yi Tian treated other people. When it came to herself, Yi Tian didn't know what it meant to quit while one was ahead. Yi steeled her heart and hid her emotions. With a cold expression, she said, "In the future, I hope that you won't come looking for me again." Yi Tian's expression changed as she asked, "What do you mean by that? I'm your mother. You've never treated me as your daughter. Why are you saying such hypocritical things now?" Yi looked at her with pity. "Yi, you can't do this. You don't have to pay back the money you owe Anan. I'll pay it back for you. From now on, no matter what, don't come looking for me again. While you're still pretty, why don't you find a good man and marry him?" Yi Tian's breathing became more and more erratic. In the end, she started to cry. Yi was caught off guard by Yi Tian's sudden outburst. She was a little frightened. Looking at her mother before her, Yi couldn't bear to see her like this. But she knew Yi Tian's character. A leopard could change its spots, but a leopard couldn't. If she didn't do that, Yi Tian would only go overboard in the future. Only by making Yi Tian feel her cold heart would she be able to be self-sufficient in the future. When Yi Tian changed her bad habit and temper, Yi would bring her back to her side when she was old and look after her in her old age. That was the conclusion that she had come to after discussing with Li Jinnan on the way there. Furthermore, she was the one who had suggested the idea. Li Jinnan had approved it wholeheartedly. She couldn't afford to lose her cool at a time like this. But Yi Tian was completely unaware of their plan. Her cries grew louder and louder. Yi Tian's voice was almost hoarse as she yelled, "My daughter, how did you become like this? I'm your mother. Have you forgotten that when you were bullied at school when you were young, I went to avenge you? At that time, everyone laughed at me and said that I was an adult bullying a child. But I was willing to do it for my daughter. How did my daughter become like this now? You, my daughter." Yi leaned against Li Jinnan. Her eyes began to burn. Finally, she said, "Yi, Mr. Li." Yi said Yi Jinnan of Yi. And Yi Tian was Yi Tian. Yi Tian of. "All right, Mr. Li. I'll do my best." Lawyer Yi nodded his head and looked at Yi Tian with pity. But a pitiful man must have a hateful side. Chapter 1651. It wasn't just Lawyer Yi who thought that way. Even Li Jinnan and Yi shared the same thought. Just as Li Jinnan was about to say that, Yi Tian suddenly raised her head and ran toward them. Yi Tian's momentum was too strong. Li Jinnan narrowed his eyes and pulled Yi back. He pulled Yi to the back and looked at Yi Tian's menacing figure. He didn't move or give way. Yi cried out in surprise. Before she could dodge, she saw Yi Tian's body slam into Li Jinnan. Li Jinnan's body swayed a little from the sudden impact, but he quickly regained his footing and stood firmly on the spot. Yi felt her body sway slightly, but it was very slight. However, at the same time, Yi Tian let out a blood-curdling scream and fell to the ground. Yi instinctively looked at Yi Tian and saw that she was crying even harder. She was sitting on the ground and pounding her chest. "Are you all right?" Yi's heart ached. She touched the spot where Yi Tian had slammed into him. Her voice was anxious. Li Jinnan's body was steady. He held her hand in his and said, "I'm fine. I'm fine. Of course I'm fine." Yi looked at his hand. The spot where she had slammed into him was already red. Something had even scraped off a large piece of skin. Yi's voice carried a hint of sobbing. "Why didn't you move away? Did it hurt?" "I'm fine." Li Jinnan was exasperated. He pressed her down slightly and said, "If I had moved away, wouldn't I have bumped into you and the child?" This was his first child. He couldn't allow anything to happen to it. He still had to depend on this child. The mother of the child had to be sent home. When Yi Yu heard that, she was so touched that she burst into tears. Her tears and snot gathered as she sobbed softly. Li Jinnan held her in his arms and asked in a low voice, "Were you frightened?" Yi Yu cried even harder. Her tears were dripping onto his body. "Let's go. We're going back." Li Jinnan held her in his arms and walked away. He turned to look at Lawyer Yi and said, "You settle it. Be careful." "Yes, Mr. Li." He followed Yi Yu out. Just as he was about to find another place to eat, Yi Yu grabbed his hand. Yi Yu's heart ached as she said, "Let's go to the hospital to treat it. Look, he's bleeding." Li Jinnan glanced at it and didn't mind it at all. He tore off the skin and replied, "It doesn't hurt. When I was in the army, this little thing was nothing. I've even taken bullets before." She looked at him and pursed her lips. Large drops of tears rolled down her cheeks as she said, "You scared me." Yi Yu was even more afraid after hearing that. Li Jinnan quickly waved his hands and said, "Yes, yes, yes. I'm just scaring you. Don't cry. I'm hungry. Shall we go eat?" Yi Yu glanced at it. It was just a small scratch. It would be fine if she didn't deal with it. She nodded her head. When they got home after dinner, Yi Yu dragged him to a nearby pharmacy to have his wound treated. It happened to be afternoon. They couldn't be bothered to rest. They packed up and headed for the airport. It took more than 2 hours to travel from the capital to Kingstown. It was almost evening when they arrived. Yi Yu vomited all the way. She was on the verge of collapsing. Chapter 1652. Li Jinnan had just carried his wife to the taxi stand when he saw 2 familiar faces at the front of the line. "Look over there." Li Jinnan gently patted Yi Yu. Yi Yu looked up and saw Yi Qianqian immediately. Standing next to Yi Qianqian was a tall man. He was dressed simply and fashionably. From the side, his facial features were very strong. He had a head of clean short hair and fair skin. He looked very handsome. Who else could it be but Shinjilia? Yi Yu was a little surprised and asked, "Why is Shinjilia here too? Is he on the same flight as us?" "I don't think so." Li Jinnan saw that Yi Yu's eyes were burning with curiosity and teased, "Will Shinjilia become your brother-in-law?" Yi Yu's brows knitted together when she heard that. The thought of having to call Shinjilia brother-in-law made her feel a little weird. "I don't think so." Yi Qianqian was taking an afternoon nap when she received a call from Shinjilia. The B** starred only said one thing when he picked up the phone. "I'll be in Kingstown at 3. Remember to pick me up." "I'm not picking up." "Get lost." "No, I don't have a penny on me. I've never taken the subway before. I can't go back. You have to pick me up." "Get lost." Yi Qianqian was furious. She turned off her phone and hugged her pillow to sleep soundly. The weather outside was sunny, and the sun was blazing. With the air conditioner in the room, Yi Qianqian felt so comfortable that she lost track of time. After she got up and washed up, she suddenly remembered that Shinjilia was returning to Kingstown. She turned on her phone and saw that it was already 5 o'clock. Yi Qianqian secretly clicked her tongue. Just as she was about to call Shinjilia, she received an incoming call. Without a doubt, it was Shinjilia. Yi Qianqian felt a little guilty and weakly said, "Hello. Miss Yi. I've been standing at the airport for more than an hour." "Well, why don't you hail a cab and come back?" "I don't have any money on me." Shinjilia's voice was filled with grievance. "This month's salary is only coming tomorrow. I'm free after I bought the plane ticket. F***ck. Aren't you from a rich family? How could you possibly rely on your salary to make a living?" Yi Qianqian obviously didn't believe him. "Who told you that I'm from a rich family? My father is a doctor, and my mother is a professor. What kind of rich family am I?" Shinjilia's luggage was placed beside him in the airport's VIP lounge. He was enjoying the air conditioning as he sipped on a cup of coffee. "You think I don't know? Your father is the director, your mother is the head of the laboratory department, and your brother is a medical genius. How could you not have enough money to take a taxi? I don't believe it. Hurry up and come back. If you don't come back, then forget it. It's impossible for me to pick you up. Don't be so heartless, okay? I really didn't. Besides, I don't know how to take the subway." I've never taken one before. Yi Qianqian steeled her heart and said, I'm not going. She immediately hung up the phone. Julia was rebuffed and felt a little defeated. The young lady in the VIP room walked over with a red face and said, Mr. Shun, where are you going? I'm going to get off work soon. You can take my car later. But I don't have any money. Julia lied without even blushing. It's okay. Let's add each other on WeChat. Just treat it as my taxi fare. What do you think? There's no need. My girlfriend is coming to pick me up. Chapter 1653. When the young lady heard that, she was disappointed and walked away resentfully. Julia turned around and picked up his phone to bombard Yi Qianqian with messages. Yi Qianqian couldn't stop herself from being bombarded. She replied angrily, You're so annoying. Which airport are you at? Nan. Yi Qianqian changed her clothes and quickly got up. When they arrived, they saw Julia standing alone pitifully. He was carrying a suitcase, and his appearance alone attracted a lot of attention. When he saw that Yi Qianqian had arrived, Julia immediately rushed over and said, You're finally here. You almost killed me. Ouch, my legs. Yi Qianqian was a little embarrassed and said, Let's go. I can't walk anymore. I've been standing for more than 2 hours. I haven't even stood for that long this month. Yi Qianqian replied, Today is the first. Julia greeted her with a smile and said, See? Isn't there nothing wrong with this? When she saw him jumping around so energetically, the embarrassment that Yi Qianqian had felt earlier dissipated. As they walked to the taxi queue, the two of them were planning what to eat later. When Yi Qianqian turned around, she saw a familiar person standing not far away. When she saw the person, Yi Qianqian's voice immediately stopped. When Julia saw that, he turned his head to look as well. When he saw Li Jinan and Yi Yuyu, he was shocked. He quickly waved at them and said, Hey, what a coincidence. When Yi Yuyu saw Julia's natural demeanor, she found it even stranger. Yi Yuyu nudged Li Jinan and said, Let's go over to them. Put me down, and I'll walk there myself. Li Jinan acted as if he hadn't heard her, and continued walking. The queue was quite long, so it took Li Jinan some time to reach them. When he reached them, it was their turn to get into the taxi. The four of them shared a car. Li Jinan, Yi Yuyu, and Yi Qianqian sat in the back, while Julia sat in front. Sis, why are you at the airport? Yi Qianqian felt an indescribable sense of awkwardness from the moment she bumped into them. Apart from living together, she and Julia were just ordinary friends. What would Yi Yuyu think if I told her that a girl had come to the airport to pick up a man? For a moment, Yi Qianqian didn't know how to respond. All she could do was laugh awkwardly and say, Why did you suddenly come back? Why didn't you tell me? I could have welcomed you back. I already made a deal with GM Li. I'll treat you to dinner tonight. No one is allowed to fight me for it. With one look, Yi Yuyu knew that she was trying to change the subject. She subconsciously glanced at Julia, who was sitting quietly in the front seat, and tactfully kept quiet. During the meal, Julia naturally sat next to Yi Qianqian. Yi Qianqian naturally took the menu and placed her order. She didn't seem to mind that Julia was sitting next to her. She pretended to ask casually, Julia, how long have you been working in Kingstown? Oh, it's been a while. More than a month, Julia said as he poured tea. Oh, Yi replied. Did the company arrange for you to stay in the dormitory? Yi Qianqian stopped flipping through the menu when she heard that. Chapter 1654. Yi Qianqian's reaction was so dramatic that everyone turned to look at her. Yi Yuyu's eyes were filled with confusion. Li Jinan gave them a meaningful look. Julia was a little confused as he looked at Yi Qianqian. It was obvious that he didn't understand what was going on. Yi Qianqian chuckled. Faced with the gazes of the three of them, she felt a little awkward. Her cheeks began to heat up. Yi Qianqian laughed dryly and said, Isn't that the case? As she spoke, she looked at Julia. Julia was still in a state of confusion. What's wrong with living together? It's not like we're in the same room or bed. When he saw Yi Qianqian's expression, Julia immediately corrected himself and said, Ah yes. Yi Yu could tell that there was a story behind their exchange, but she couldn't figure out what the problem was. It was said that pregnancy made one foolish for 3 years. She had just gotten pregnant, and her brain was already a little confused. Yi Qianqian lowered her head in silence. She flipped through the menu as her eyes darted around. Li Jinan picked up his teacup and took a sip. He looked at Shen Jilia and said, "Have you been very busy lately? You've been running around in Kingstown. On one side is your home, and on the other." As he spoke, his voice paused for a moment, unsure if it was intentional or not. This slight pause made Yi Qianqian's heart skip a beat. On the other side is work. When Li Jinan finished speaking, Shen Jilia crossed his fingers and said, "It's not too bad. I've been on leave recently, and there's nothing much to do in the hospital. It's just that I can't take it anymore running back and forth. When are you planning to get married?" The change in topic was a little harsh, but Yi Qianqian finally heaved a sigh of relief. "Soon. We'll go to the Civil Affairs Bureau on Monday." Li Jinan had already planned it out. "I plan to act first and report later. I'll bring her home after we get our marriage certificate." "Won't your mother kill you?" Shen Jilia laughed. "I heard that your mother is very conservative. Does she know what's going on with Yi Yu? She does. That's why I need to act first and report later. If you need any help, remember to call me. I'm very useful. I can even pretend to be a dead body." He turned to look at Yi Qianqian and asked, "Are you sure you can do it or not? Have you ordered the dishes?" Yi Qianqian asked. Yi Qianqian's mind was filled with thoughts, and she didn't even notice it on the menu. When she heard Shen Jilia's words, her heart skipped a beat. Just as he was about to flare up, he sensed the gaze in front of him, so he suppressed his anger. She braced herself and looked at the menu in front of her. She frowned and said, "Waiter, let's order." The waiter quickly came over. After Yi Qianqian ordered a few dishes, Shen Jilia said, "I'd like to have a steamed egg." Yi Qianqian had a look of disdain on her face. "Steamed eggs every day. Won't I get sick of you?" "I just like it. There's also yuxiang shredded pork." "No. Even if you're not sick of eating it every day, I'll be sick of it. I want a dongpo pork and a bowl of olive soup, one for each person." "Oh, right. Do you have pearl vermicelli? Give me one." When Shen Jilia heard that, he turned to the waiter and said, "Steamed eggs." The waitress seemed to know that Shen Jilia's words were useless, so she looked at Yi Qianqian. Sure enough, Yi Qianqian quickly said, "Ignore him. That's all. Help me up faster." "Okay, please wait a moment." Chapter 1655. When Yi Qianqian saw the complicated expression on her sister's face, she immediately realized what was going on. What she had just said seemed to be inappropriate. Yi Yu wasn't stupid. On the contrary, she was very smart. Her heart suddenly became uneasy. Yi Qianqian laughed dryly and said, "Our company is close by, so we often eat together." "You don't say. This guy's cooking skills are pretty good. It's a far cry from his looks." When he heard that, Shen Jilia was displeased. He immediately retorted, Hey, that's too much. What's wrong with my looks? I'm handsome and I can cook. Do you have a problem with that?" Yi Qianqian gave herself a big thumbs up for changing the topic perfectly. When Yi Qianqian heard Shen Jilia's defiant words, she turned her head and looked at him with contempt. She sneered but didn't say a word. Shen Jilia was so angry that he felt a lump in his throat. He reached out and pretended to strangle her, but in the end, he couldn't bring himself to do it. He let out a long sigh and lamented, "Why is my life so bitter? I get angered by you every day, and I have to serve you. It's so tiring being a man." "Serve your grandpa, serve. When did you ever serve me?" Yi Qianqian roared with her hands on her hips. Her face was full of indignation. Shen Jilia sighed and said, "Didn't I? I don't know who it was that carried you to the hospital when you were sick and vomiting. He even stayed by your bedside to guard you, afraid that you would die in your sleep." T. Yi Qianqian was infuriated. She reached out and pinched his hand. She yelled, "You're the one who's going to die." Shen Jilia grimaced in pain from the pinch. He quickly said, "Isn't this the saying that beauties are unlucky? The prettier they are, the shorter their lives. I'm just worried about you." When Yi Qianqian heard that, She immediately retracted her hand. She looked at Shen Jilia with a face full of gratitude. She touched the arm that she had just pinched and asked, "Does it hurt?" "I'm sorry. I used too much force." Yi Yi was speechless. Li Jinnan was speechless. Yi Qianqian looked into the distance and said, "Your worries are very reasonable. I feel that it's a blessing to have a friend like you in my life." Shen Jilia replied, "Are you serious?" Yi Qianqian's expression immediately changed, and she elbowed him. Yi Yu and Li Jinnan couldn't help but laugh out loud. "When did you get sick? Is it serious?" Yi Yu asked as she picked up her teacup. "It wasn't a big deal. He just caught a cold and was dehydrated. He was on a drip for a day, and was fine after drinking some medicine." Shen Jilia didn't think much of it. "This guy's body is as strong as a bull. He's usually fine. F***ck, you're the one who looks like a cow." "It's a good thing that I'm like a cow. I'm a man. You're the man," Shen Jilia replied. "Puffed. I've always been a man." Yi Qianqian glared at him. "Then you look like a woman." "You're speaking incoherently. You just said that I look like a man. Don't you think it's inappropriate to change your words so quickly?" "I don't care. You're just like a woman." Shen Jilia waved his hands in resignation and said, Fine. I look like a man, all right?" Yi Qianqian didn't hear him clearly. When she saw his cowardly expression, she smiled proudly and said, "That's more like it." Chapter 1656. Shen Jilia's smug expression infuriated Yi Qianqian even more. The waiter soon served the dishes, and Shen Jilia was in a great mood. "Hello, sir. Your meal is here." Shen Jilia picked up his chopsticks and said, "All right, let's eat. I'm starving. I waited for someone at the airport for more than 2 hours. Ouch, I'm dying from standing." Yi Qianqian retorted, "Tui, don't you know how to go back yourself? What's wrong with you to insist on someone else picking you up?" "I don't have any money on me. Look, I was the one who paid for your medical fees. What's wrong with you coming to pick me up?" Shen Jilia spoke boldly and confidently. He held his head high and puffed out his chest. He didn't feel that there was anything wrong with his words. Yi Qianqian glared at him and said angrily, "Are you even a man? Does your future wife know that you're so stingy?" D***men. Our door is made of wood. If I break it, we'll have to get a new one. How troublesome would that be? Besides, I was just casually mentioning it. How am I stingy? Yi Qianqian sneered, and turned her head to give him a look of contempt. She didn't say another word. "That's enough, both of you. How old are you? Why are you still so childish? What's there to argue about?" Yi Yu chuckled and picked some food for Li Jinnan. "Try this." "Ouch, the sour smell of love." Yi Qianqian harumphed with a look of disgust. When Shen Jilia heard that, the food that was about to reach his mouth immediately changed direction and went toward Yi Qianqian's bowl. "Try this." When Yi Qianqian saw that, she immediately frowned and said, "Get lost. You're so dirty." Shen Jilia didn't seem to realize that he was being disliked. He smiled and picked up more food. As he picked up more food, he said, "I'm doing this to satisfy you. Look at you. An old woman who's been single for so many years. You're the old woman." "Hey, don't keep interrupting me. I'm not done yet. You don't have to say it. Nothing good comes out of your dog mouth anyway." Yi Qianqian rolled her eyes at him. Shen Jilia replied, F***ck. We're the same species. If I have a dog's mouth, then what's yours? Shut up. This. Shen Jilia frowned and asked with a serious expression, "What kind of mouth is that?" Yi Yu couldn't help but laugh. Li Jinnan glanced at them and casually asked, "Are the two of you living together?" Yi Qianqian's heart skipped a beat when she heard that. She instinctively glared at Shen Jilia. Shen Jilia wore an innocent expression on his face. He shrugged his shoulders in the face of Yi Qianqian's murderous glare. Yi Qianqian laughed dryly and asked, "Why do you ask?" What Li Jinnan wanted to ask was what Yi Yi wanted to ask as well. When he heard Yi Qianqian's awkward expression, his eyes filled with curiosity as he looked at his sister. "I'm just curious. It seems like the two of you have a pretty good relationship." Li Jinnan took a sip of the soup without lifting his head. "How could that be? You're thinking too much." Yi Qianqian lowered her head and ate a mouthful of food. Her gaze was somewhat evasive. We just eat together occasionally. Is that so? Yi Yu didn't think that was all there was to it. From the looks of it, their relationship seemed to be pretty good. At the very least, it wasn't the first time they had bickered and teased each other like this. Chapter 1657. But if Shen Jiliet and Yi Qianqian ended up together, then their relationship would be a little complicated. She was Shen Luoan's ex-wife and Shen Jilia's ex-sister-in-law. Although she married Shen Luo and didn't have a wedding, everyone in the Shen family knew her. So, if they knew that Yi Qianqian was her sister, what would those relatives and friends think? Yi Yu felt a little ridiculous, but when she saw how they were arguing, she felt that the relationship between them wasn't the kind of relationship she had imagined. Their words revealed that they weren't a couple. Since they weren't a couple, how could they live together? Yi Yu was convinced by her own thoughts. After thinking about it, she quietly ate her meal. When Yi Qianqian saw that she didn't ask any more questions, she secretly breathed a sigh of relief. God knows I was scared to death. Although I lived with Shen Jilia, it wasn't a cohabiting relationship at all. He was just a landlord and a tenant. She didn't want to tell Yi Yu because she wanted to avoid unnecessary trouble. Yes, that's right. Yi Qianqian lowered her head and ate without saying another word. On the other hand, when Shen Jilia heard that they didn't continue the topic, his heart was a little itchy. But if he said anything at this time, Yi Qianqian would probably explode. She quieted down, and the atmosphere suddenly became a little quiet and awkward. In the end, Shen Jilia couldn't help but break the silence and asked, Yu Yu is pregnant. Do you still plan to go on a honeymoon after you get married? This happened to be the key question. Yi Yu didn't know, so she looked at third brother Li. Li Jinnan had already considered it and said, yes, but we have to wait until the belly is a little bigger and the fetus is stable. We can then prepare for this when we can wait for labor. As he spoke, he looked at Yi Yu and asked, what do you think? Okay. Yi Yu's heart was unbelievably warm. Yi Yu had never thought about these problems. But unknowingly, Li Jinnan had already thought about all these things and had already made a decision. Such a man made Yi Yu feel very safe. Yi Qianqian looked at him enviously. She had never seen such a happy expression on Yi Yu's face. That's great. Sigh, why hasn't my Mr. Right appeared yet? She bit down hard on the rice in her mouth. Her heart was filled with grief and indignation. After the meal, they went their separate ways. Li Jinnan hailed a cab with Yi Yu. Before Yi Yu got into the car, she reminded them, be careful on the road. Don't worry. I'll be here. Shen Jilia patted his chest and promised, I'll send your sister home safely. Thank you, then we'll go. Goodbye. Shen Jilia waved and smiled brightly. Just as the car carrying Li Jinnan and Yi Yu drove off, Yi Qianqian turned around and punched him in the stomach. Shen Jilia was hit so suddenly that he clutched his stomach and screamed exaggeratedly, my God, you. Of course, Yi Qianqian knew that he was faking it. Her punch wasn't enough to vent her anger. She yelled angrily, what the F***ck are you talking about in front of my sister? You almost gave yourself away. He looked at her innocently and exclaimed, what are you doing? You didn't tell me that I can't tell her that we're living together. Chapter 1658. Shen Jilia said matter-of-factly, so what if we live together? It's not like we're going to bed. We're innocent. What's there to be afraid of? Yi Qianqian felt her cheeks heat up when she heard that. She stared at him with wide eyes. Under the dim light, her cheeks were suspiciously flushed. So what if we're going to bed? We're both unmarried. Even if we're really together, it's only natural. Yi Qianqian didn't know what to say to refute him. Shen Jilia's eyes widened as well. He squatted down and looked at her suspiciously. He frowned and looked at her strangely. He asked suspiciously, are you blushing? Yi Qianqian was annoyed by his stare. She raised her leg and kicked him. She roared, get lost. You're so blushing. Shen Jilia hurriedly covered his private parts with his hands and backed away with a look of lingering fear on his face. He patted his chest and said, oh my dear. That was a terrible kick. My future sexual happiness depends on him. If you ruin it now, what will I use in the future? Shinjilia was stunned. Yi Qianqian turned around and stomped away angrily. Her face was getting hotter and hotter. Her mind was filled with the image of him covering his private parts. If he took off his clothes, oh my God. Her mind was full of dirty thoughts. Yi Qianqian shook her head and walked faster. It wasn't far from her house. It would only take her about 10 minutes to get there. Shinjilia saw her walking faster and faster. He grabbed his suitcase and hurried to catch up with her. He shouted, "Hey, don't walk so fast after eating. You'll get a stomachache. If it really hurts, I'm not going to help you." Yi Qianqian's footsteps slowed down. Something strange began to spread in her heart. It was silent, and it was hard for her to ignore it. Her heart was beating fast, and her cheeks were burning. This was a sign that she was in love. Yi Qianqian suddenly realized that she was losing control of herself around Shinjilia. This kind of sign was not good. This guy is so frivolous and unreliable. What will I do in the future if I fall in love with him? No. Yi Qianqian, be more promising. Shinjilia looked at her from behind. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, and he quickened his steps to catch up. Wait for me. My luggage is so heavy. Yi Qianqian snorted and said nothing more. Yi Qianqian soon arrived home. She fumbled for the key and entered the passcode. When she opened the door and entered, it was pitch black inside. Yi Qianqian turned on the lights and entered the house. She headed to the balcony to clean up and prepared to take a shower. Shinjilia glanced at her and said, "It's not good for your health to take a shower and rest so soon after returning from a walk." Yi Qianqian's face was still warm. She didn't dare turn around and said, "None of your business." After saying that, he entered the bathroom. The bathroom was separated by a glass partition. When Yi Qianqian showered, she even drew the curtain. After all, there was a man living in the house. What if he peeped at them? Shinjilia wasn't the least bit annoyed at being yelled at. On the contrary, he found her adorable. Shinjilia rubbed his nose. He thought he must have gone crazy. His masochistic tendencies were too severe. Shinjilia turned on the air conditioner and resigned himself to his fate. He opened his suitcase and began to pack his luggage. But before he could pack a few things, the light above his head suddenly flickered, and then the whole world went dark. Shinjilia, don't play pranks. Dash. Chapter 1659. Shinjilia was completely innocent. He shouted helplessly, "Do I look like that kind of person to you?" Yi Qianqian heard Shinjilia's voice from inside the bathroom. She looked at the darkness in front of her and felt like she was about to collapse. In other words, a power outage. She was only halfway through washing her hair. There were still bubbles on her body. Was she supposed to take a shower in the dark? Is there a power outage? I think so. I'll call the property management. The glimmer of hope that Yi Qianqian had in her heart was completely shattered. Ever since she was very young, she had night blindness. When it was dark at night, it was difficult to see anything. Especially in the dark bathroom. Yi Qianqian couldn't even see her fingers in front of her. Fortunately, the power outage didn't affect the natural gas. Yi Qianqian washed her hair in the dark and casually washed her body. Then she opened the bathroom door. Yi Qianqian didn't like to wear shoes when taking a shower. With one step, he stepped on the cold floor outside. The floor was wet and slippery. Yi Qianqian carefully felt for her clothes, but after searching for a long time, she couldn't find them. When she stepped on them, she found that she had stepped on a very elastic fabric. It was her underwear. Yi Qianqian was about to go crazy. It really was a perfect coincidence. How did the clothes fall to the ground out of nowhere? Yi Qianqian took a step back and bent down to pick them up. She didn't know what she had stepped on, but she fell back on her butt. Thud. Shinjilia had just finished his call to the property management. When someone came for maintenance, he heard a loud noise coming from inside. It was obvious that she had fallen down. Shinjilia was so frightened that his heart skipped a beat. He quickly asked, "Are you all right?" There was no sound from inside. Shinjilia felt that something was wrong. He took a few steps forward and heard the sound of breathing coming from inside. He reached out and knocked on the door. "How are you?" Yi Qianqian sounded like she was about to cry as she said, I can't get up. My feet hurt. When she fell down, her head had hit the bathroom door heavily. It was a real pain. But it was her ankle that hurt even more. The angle of her fall was strange. Her entire weight was supported by her twisted ankle. Now, Yi Qianqian couldn't move at all. The moment she moved, she felt a piercing pain in her heart. When Shen Jilya heard that, he knew he was in trouble. Did you hurt your foot? Where does it hurt? Feet. Ankle. Can you stand up? Can I go in? As he spoke, Shen Jilya placed his hand on the doorknob. When Yi Qianqian heard that, she didn't have time to cry. She sniffled and shouted, "Don't! I'm naked!" Shen Jilya immediately retracted his hand. Scratching his head in annoyance, he asked, "Can you get up?" Yi Qianqian was about to go crazy. She sniffled and felt extremely wronged. He had never been so unlucky before. "What's with you? Can I help him up? Put on your clothes first. I'll go in and carry you later." Shen Jilya looked around. It was pitch black. He couldn't see anything at all. When Yi Qianqian heard that, she looked around and inched toward the toilet. He reached out to pick up the clothes, but there was only a soaked underwear on the ground. The other clothes were nowhere to be found. How could she be so unlucky? "Yi Qianqian," Shen Jilya urged when he didn't hear a response. Chapter 1660. Yi Qianqian. Shen Jilya urged when he didn't hear a response. Yi Qianqian was sitting on the ground. Her entire body was wet. Her ankle was in excruciating pain. It felt as if it would break if she moved it. Yi Qianqian slowly moved toward the toilet. She closed the lid and stood up with the toilet in her arms. Shen Jilya heard the movement inside and shouted again, "Yi Qianqian, what are you doing in there?" Yi Qianqian felt even more aggrieved when she heard Shen Jilya's words. She shouted back, "I told you that my ankle hurts. Why are you being so noisy?" Shen Jilya was speechless. He thought about it and reached out to twist the door handle. Yi Qianqian immediately widened her eyes when she heard that. She warned him, "What are you doing? Are you trying to peek at me?" "Pfft! What's there to look at with that tiny body of yours? I'm afraid that you'll die in there." Shen Jilya twisted the door handle hard and realized that it was locked from the inside. When Yi Qianqian heard that, she roared, "You're the one who's going to die in there." "Hey, I'm opening the door. It's so dark anyway. I can't see anything. Besides, I'm not interested in you. Go to hell." Yi Qianqian was even more annoyed. She grabbed the toilet and lifted her body up. However, Shen Jilya kicked the door open with one foot. She was caught off guard by the sudden bang. Yi Qianqian jumped in fright. She broke out in a cold sweat. Her body trembled, and she stared ahead with her eyes wide open. She vaguely saw a huge shadow coming toward her. Yi Qianqian shrank back and warned him, "What? What are you trying to do?" Shen Jilya laughed impatiently and said, "What can I do to someone like you? Come on, I'll get you out of here." As he spoke, he squatted down in front of her. Don't look over here." Yi Qianqian reached out to look for his eyes. "Be careful, or I'll gouge your eyes out." Shen Jilya still had a little night vision, but when he squatted down, his body blocked the pitiful amount of light. He couldn't see anything at all. When he heard that, Shen Jilya laughed and said, "I won't look. I won't feel anything even if I look at you." As she spoke, Yi Qianqian covered Shen Jilya's eyes with her wet hands. Shen Jilya reached out to hug her in the dark. However, as soon as he stretched out his hand, his fingertips came into contact with soft flesh. Suddenly his heart twitched. Shen Jilya immediately retracted his hand, and his cheeks began to burn. Yi Qianqian noticed his small movement, and her breathing became heavy. She used her other hand to protect her body and deliberately shouted, "Why did you poke my stomach? Hurry up, the ground is very cold." So it was her stomach. Shen Jilya breathed a sigh of relief, but he was also slightly disappointed. Then, he stretched out his hand and clearly felt his hand pass under her armpit. It was soft. Yi Qianqian exclaimed. Shen Jilya thought she was just being nervous and ignored her. He pulled her into his arms. Yi Qianqian roared, "Be*****, pervert." As she spoke, she raised her hand and gave him a slap. The slap on Shen Jilya's face wasn't heavy, but it stunned him. Subconsciously, he touched the soft thing in his palm. The soft thing suddenly became hard. Chapter 1661. Shinjilia immediately realized what it was. He quickly retracted his hand and explained, "It's a misunderstanding. It's a misunderstanding. I thought it was your back." Yi Qianqian screamed angrily, "Back my ass. I really thought it was your back. Who knew it was your front? I'm innocent. It's such a big asterisk here. UF asterisk king excuse." Yi Qianqian reached out and pushed him forcefully. F asterisk CK. Even if it's a asterisk, how would I know if you didn't get hard? I can't see. Shinjilia felt that he was more innocent than Do Yi and shouted, "Besides, I didn't do it on purpose." You're still talking. You're still talking." Slap after slap landed on his body. Shinjilia gasped for air and quickly held her hand. Shinjilia was very strong. He quickly restrained Yi Qianqian and said, all right. I was wrong. I'll get you out of here first. Get your asterisk SS out of here." Yi Qianqian's voice sounded like she was about to cry. She had never been touched by a man in her entire life. Moreover, not only did he take advantage of her, but he also humiliated and abused her. What a SL*T. Shinjilia knew that he was in the wrong. When he heard her look like she was about to cry, he closed his eyes and said, all right. You're my asterisk SS. I'll get you out of here. Behave yourself." As he spoke, Shinjilia reached out and touched her hand. When he was sure that he wouldn't touch anything he shouldn't, he pulled her up and slowly supported her. Yi Qianqian's ankle was in unbearable pain. She had no choice but to support Shinjilia and limped toward the sofa in the living room. As soon as he put Yi Qianqian down, the surrounding lights lit up, and the sound of electrical appliances could be heard. Both Yi Qianqian and Shinjilia were stunned. They instinctively looked at each other. With one glance, Shinjilia saw a snow-white expanse and Yi Qianqian's dumbfounded expression. Yi Qianqian screamed at the top of her lungs and raised her leg to kick him. She covered her body with both hands. Shinjilia felt a rush of blood rush to his head. He suddenly felt his body heat up. When he saw Yi Qianqian in this state, Shinjilia immediately covered his eyes and shouted, I didn't see anything. Turn around. Shinjilia immediately turned around and stammered, I really didn't see anything. Scram. Shinjilia coughed uncomfortably and said, I'll get you some clothes. As he spoke, he quickly walked into her room and opened the closet. He found a dress that looked easy to wear. He pinched a pair of pink striped panties and a black bra with the tips of his fingers before he walked out. However, as soon as he stepped out, he immediately closed his eyes. He tossed the clothes to her and closed his eyes as he said, Hurry up and get dressed. I'll take you to the hospital. Yi Qianqian pursed her lips and watched helplessly as he tossed the clothes to the side of the table. She didn't know what to feel. She picked up the clothes and put them on one by one before saying, I'm done. Shinjilia turned his head and looked at her feet. Which foot hurts? Yi Qianqian kicked her left foot. When Shinjilia saw it, he squatted down. It looked like the injury was quite serious. It was already red, swollen and a little green. Did you twist it? Does it hurt? Chapter 1662. Yi Qianqian gave him a look that said, You're talking nonsense. When Shinjilia heard what she said, he felt uncomfortable all over. He coughed lightly and said, I'll take you to the hospital. Let's go. As soon as he said that, Shinjilia reached out to grab Yi Qianqian's arm. Yi Qianqian was suddenly touched. She was shocked, and she felt a little strange. Shinjilia also felt a little awkward, but he couldn't underestimate her injuries. Hardening his heart, he reached out and carried her horizontally in his arms. Yi Qianqian wanted to struggle, but she immediately calmed down. She obediently nestled in his arms and pursed her lips in silence. Her heart suddenly raced, and Yi Qianqian's cheeks grew hotter. Shinjilia didn't dare look at her. But before he opened the door, he heard the doorbell ring. When he opened it, he saw that it was the property manager. Hello. But when he saw Shinjilia carrying a woman, He immediately swallowed his words. What? What happened? Shinjilia angrily replied. The power went out. She fell in the shower and got hurt. When the property manager heard that, he immediately apologized. I'm so sorry. This was an accident. Everyone on this floor has a power outage. I'm really sorry. That's enough. I don't have time. I have to take her to the hospital. Oh, okay. Do you need help? I have a car. Why don't I take you and your girlfriend to the hospital together? It's on the way. Yi Qianqian turned her head away and said, Don't spout nonsense. Who's his girlfriend? When the property manager heard that, he panicked and said, Could it be brother and sister? But wasn't one surnamed Shun and the other Yi? Moreover, the two of them didn't look alike. How could they be brother and sister? Not really. Shinjilia took a step forward. Then I'll have to trouble you. Where's your car? It's in the basement. Let's go down together. Okay. Shinjilia quickly closed the door with Yi Qianqian in his arms and entered the elevator. The air was unbelievably quiet. The property manager also felt very awkward. He laughed and said, Miss Yi has lived here for a long time, and nothing like this has ever happened before. This is only the first time. It's only the first time, and it's already so serious. If it happens a few more times, won't I die here? Yi Qianqian was filled with anger. If I die, will you apologize to me so that I won't be angry? Yi Qianqian's words were very blunt, which made the property manager even more embarrassed. She said, I'm really sorry, but it's fortunate that your boyfriend was around. He was able to discover it in time. Otherwise, it would have been bad if there had been any delay. Bah, your boyfriend? Yi Qianqian was about to speak when she heard Shinjilia say, That's enough. It's good that you're fine now. What's there to be angry about? The entire floor has been shut down. We're not the only ones. That's the property management's responsibility. If they had maintained it properly, would this have happened? Yes. What happened today will not happen a second time. When Yi Qianqian heard his sincere apology, she couldn't bring herself to vent her anger on him anymore. She glared at Shinjilia and shouted, It's all your fault. If not, how could I have fallen for no reason? This is my fault again? Shinjilia felt completely wronged. Is there anyone like you? If you fall, so be it. Who wouldn't fall? Why are you blaming me? Chapter 1663. Shinjilia stammered. But when he looked down and saw Yi Qianqian's expression, which said, If you dare talk back to me, I'll kill you. Shinjilia was at a loss for words. Pursing her lips, she looked at the man and asked, Where's your car? It's here. The property manager immediately drove over. Come on. Yi Qianqian wasn't heavy, but it was still tiring to carry her. The property manager opened the car door, and Shinjilia carefully placed Yi Qianqian inside before sitting in the car himself. Yi Qianqian glanced at him and asked, Are you going to sit here? Shinjilia was a little confused and asked, What else? Who's watching you? All right. Yi Qianqian sat beside him. Her emotions were very complicated. This guy, he's quite nice to me. She seems to have fallen for him. Otherwise, why wouldn't she be angry when he pinched me there? Her heart was beating faster and faster. Yi Qianqian turned her head away and looked out the window. The property manager drove obediently and didn't dare look at them. Fortunately, it was night time, and there weren't many people on the road. The car drove smoothly to the hospital and quickly dropped them off. Yi Qianqian was sent to the emergency room. It was confirmed that she had sprained her ankle, but it wasn't serious. However, she probably wouldn't be able to walk freely for the next few days. After applying medicine and bandaging, Yi Qianqian supported Shinjilia and limped back home. Shinjilia's hand was held, and he supported her with the other hand. He asked, Do you want some snacks? No. I'll die of obesity if I eat snacks at night. Yi Qianqian looked at the ground and limped. Very slowly, Shinjilia looked at the back of her head and held her arm as he said, You're too thin. You should eat more. Damn it. How am I thin? My stomach is chubby. I'm so strong. I won't eat. It's useless to have chubby stomachs. You have to have chubby breasts. Pft. I won't eat. Then can you walk faster? Can you walk faster with a limp? Shinjilia was speechless and said, I'll carry you then. No, I'll walk on my own. When Shinjilia heard that, he ignored it. He pulled her hand over and carried her in his arms. Yi Chanqian was shocked and shouted, Shinjilia, are you crazy? Shinjilia writhed, but his body didn't sway in the slightest. He pressed her down and said, Behave yourself. This is a hospital. If you keep shouting like this, how will the other patients rest? Yi Chanqian pouted, but she quickly calmed down. She leaned on his arm. As long as she looked forward, she would be able to see his chiseled chin and his prominent Adam's apple. The sexy label of a man. Shinjilia felt Yi Chanqian looking at him. He looked down and asked, Have you fallen in love with me? Bah! Shameless! Aren't you in love with me? Why are you blushing? Shinjilia's eyes were mischievous. Don't tell me you've developed feelings for me over time? F*CKU. How shameless can you be? Yi Chanqian denied flatly, but the warmth on her face was spreading. It was steaming hot, as if it was about to burst into flames. Shinjilia chuckled, but didn't say anything else. Yi Chanqian's heart beat faster and faster, and her body tensed up. She was genuinely nervous. Shinjilia could feel it clearly. In a very low voice he said, Stubborn. Chapter 1664. She glanced at him. When she realized that he wasn't looking at her, she pretended not to hear him. Soon they reached the car. Shinjilia put Yi Chanqian in and got in himself. The two of them didn't speak again. The journey home was peaceful and quiet. Yi Chanqian got out of the car uncomfortably, but Shinjilia was already waiting outside. When he saw her come out, he reached out and pulled her over, his other hand protecting her head. He slammed the door shut and reached out to carry her. But Yi Chanqian immediately stopped him and said awkwardly, I think I'd better walk by myself. Shinjilia grunted in acknowledgement. He held her hand and slowly walked in front. Yi Chanqian felt a little disappointed. He didn't insist, but it was a little awkward to be hugged by him. They weren't even close. How could they be hugging each other all the way? While Yi Chanqian was pulled along. Because she was walking slowly, she fell behind. But all of a sudden, his hand was pulled forward. Yi Chanqian was a little shocked. She stared at him with wide eyes. Shinjilia held her in his arms. Then his lips landed on the side of her face. It was as light as a feather brushing against the bottom of her heart. It was ticklish. Her whole body tensed up in disbelief. Shinjilia carried her in his arms. It was a classic princess carry. Then he strode forward. Yi Chanqian was still in a daze. She couldn't recover from his kiss for a long time. When they reached home, just as Shinjilia was entering the password to open the door, Yi Chanqian finally said, What? What do you mean? Shinjilia glanced at her and didn't say anything. He opened the door and carried her into her room. After putting Yi Chanqian on the bed, Shinjilia didn't leave. Instead, he sat on the edge of her bed and gazed at her as he said, I'll take responsibility for you. Yi Chanqian's heart skipped a beat without warning. Then, as if she had gone crazy, she jumped up and down. What? Although you're flat-chested and your front is the same as your back, I've touched you and seen you. It's not right for me to not take responsibility. Yi Chanqian's heart, which had been racing, suddenly felt as if it had been bitten by a dog. Yi Chanqian clenched her teeth and clenched her fists. What did you say? Shinjilia knew that he was going to get beaten up again when he saw the way she was acting. Shinjilia quickly waved his hands and shouted, Calm down, big sis. I'm telling the truth. She screamed, grabbed a pillow, and threw it at him. She roared, Get lost. Yi Chanqian was furious. Shinjilia caught the pillow and pushed it in her direction. Even his entire body was pressed against her side, absolutely suppressing her. Yi Chanqian's heart raced. There was a pillow between them, but they could clearly see each other's expressions. Shinjilia's expression was very serious. His red lips and pearly white teeth made her heart palpitate even more when he smiled slightly. Crazy, crazy. Yi Chanqian really wanted to slap herself. This guy was just joking. Why did he take it so seriously? You'd be stupid if you took it seriously. Yi Qianqian warned herself in her heart, but she couldn't bear to look away from his face. Chapter 1665. I'm serious. I'm responsible for you. I won't touch you for free. Shenjilia stared at her. I said I didn't see anything, but I saw everything. Your chest is really flat. Yi Qianqian gritted her teeth and raised her hand to slap his face. However, Shenjilia was quick to react and immediately blocked his hand. Yi Qianqian had another hand, but before she could do anything, Shenjilia killed her in the cradle. You're courting death. Before she could finish her sentence, Shenjilia lowered his head and kissed her on the lips. Yi Qianqian found it hard to believe. Her eyes widened and she stood rooted to the ground. Shenjilia quickly left. He stood up and quickly said, "Rest early." Yi Qianqian was still in a state of confusion. She stared blankly at the ceiling. It was a chandelier, shining with colorful light. Her heartbeat, however, seemed to have gone numb. She couldn't feel it anymore. Her ears were ringing, and she couldn't snap out of it for a long time. But very quickly he sat up abruptly. As she watched Shenjilia close the door behind him, she screamed at the ceiling, "Ah, Shenjilia!" Shenjilia stood on the edge of the balcony, his cheeks burning. When he heard Yi Qianqian's shriek, he scratched his head in frustration. But then there was the sound of the door opening. Shenjilia's heart skipped a beat. He turned around and saw Yi Qianqian limping toward him with an angry look on her face. Shenjilia felt guilty. When he saw that she was obviously here to settle scores with him, he didn't know what to do. What he did just now was purely impulsive. He had kissed her face and her mouth. How was she going to hit him? Heavens, Shenjilia suddenly felt that the days ahead were going to be tough for him. However, when he saw Yi Qianqian's determination to take revenge despite her crippled leg, he went up to her. He held her up and said, "If you're lame, don't run around. If you get hurt again, I won't help you." Looking at his guilty and evasive face, it seemed that he was also reflecting on himself. When Yi Qianqian saw his pink cheeks, the anger that had been burning in her stomach suddenly disappeared. With a straight face, Yi Qianqian said, "I'm going to ask you a few questions. Answer me honestly." Shenjilia felt that this didn't match Yi Qianqian's personality. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond. He thought that she would beat him until he begged for mercy, and he was ready for that. Who would have thought that he was here to ask a question? There must be a trap. However, he also didn't want to be beaten. "Ask away." Shenjilia threw caution to the wind. "First of all, Yi Qianqian's face was getting redder and redder, and her heart was beating faster and faster. She braced herself and asked loudly, "Do you like me?" Shenjilia was silent for a moment. Seeing her blushing face, he nodded seriously, "Yes." Yi Qianqian's land, which had been barren for more than 20 years, suddenly blossomed with flowers. Yi Qianqian suppressed her emotions and kept a straight face as she asked, When did it start? Didn't you like Lily before? You have a change of heart so quickly, scumbag." As soon as she said that, Yi Qianqian immediately felt that something was amiss. She felt vexed. Why did he have to ask such a question? What an idiot. Chapter 1666. But after a long time, Shenjilia's face was still the same. His eyes were a little deep. He looked at her as if he was a little strange and said, "She is already married. Do you want me to be a mistress?" That's true. No one said that you had to love someone for a lifetime. Married people could get divorced. What's more, Lily was not interested in this guy from the beginning. Yi Qianqian didn't know what to say for a moment. She looked at Shenjilia, and the fiery blush on her cheeks subsided. It seemed that there was no need to be so nervous. They were so familiar with each other. And he might even think that her nervousness was very funny. Yi Qianqian pretended to be calm and coughed softly. Then, "I quite admire Lily. She is very strong. I always thought that it was a waste for her to marry Ming. That guy is a scumbag." Shenjilia moved closer to her and enunciated each word clearly. "But I later realized that if I really like someone, I don't care about what he was like in the past. It's just like how I liked Lily in the past. I didn't mind her being with Oming and having an abortion. I just wanted to save her from the abyss of suffering. Yi Qianqian didn't feel very comfortable when she heard that. He had really liked Li. Of course, Yi Qianqian knew that. But now, she had just asked him if he liked her. And he immediately said that. Wasn't that not very good? However, when she saw Shen Jilia's serious expression, Yi Qianqian coughed softly and took a step back. Uffed. But later, I found that my love for Lily was not the kind of love that a man has for a woman. As Shen Jilia spoke, his footsteps slowly approached. Yi Qianqian was shocked and subconsciously avoided him. She said, "That. What is that?" "Appreciation, and the desire to conquer that I can't get." Yi Qianqian was annoyed when she heard that. "Bah! Scumbag! This is human nature. The more you can't get, the more you want it. You are also like that, Yi Qianqian." Shen Jilia smiled slightly. But later I saw it clearly. Yi Qianqian took a step back. The pain of the sprain on her ankle made her sweat a little. Most of my feelings for her are admiration and sympathy. Most importantly, I think she's a good girl. Ha. Yi Qianqian couldn't stand it any longer. She glanced behind her and slowly inched toward the sofa. Shen Jilia took the opportunity to walk over and said, "I'm done. Do you have any other questions?" Yi Qianqian was embarrassed. The blush on her face rose again. She said, "You've gone on for too long. I've forgotten what I wanted to say." "I have already guessed it." "What?" "It's true." Yi Qianqian was even more confused and asked again, "What?" "It's true that your chest is flat." Yi Qianqian was furious when she heard that. She grabbed a pillow and threw it at him, roaring, "Get lost." Shen Jilia laughed heartily. He grabbed the pillow and said, "Do you want to take another shower? You just sat on the ground for a while, and you took a bath for nothing again. It's none of your business. Get lost." Yi Qianqian grabbed another pillow and threw it at him. Shen Jilia accepted it with a smile and asked, "Are you done with your questions?" "I'm done." "All right, then it's my turn to ask questions." Yi Qianqian's eyes widened. "Do you have any more questions?" Chapter 1667. Yi Qianqian's face was full of question marks. At the same time, her cheeks were burning. She glared at Shen Jilia and shouted angrily, "What kind of question is that? It's a serious question. You just have to answer me yes or no." No. Yi Qianqian immediately thought of something. If she were to tell him that she had never kissed anyone in her life, would it be embarrassing? Yi Qianqian immediately changed her mind and said, "Yes." Shen Jilia slowly leaned over and slowly asked, "So yes or no?" Yi Qianqian's heart skipped a beat, and she instinctively stepped back. Don't lie to me." Shen Jilia's voice was very soft, but at that moment, it was very bewitching. Yi Qianqian felt like her brain was going to explode. She mumbled, "No." "Then do you want to try?" Try. Before Yi Qianqian could react, Shen Jilia's face was already very close to hers. Shen Jilia's nose was very straight. Now that he was so close, Yi Qianqian could clearly see the tip of his nose. She instinctively shrank back, but before she could avoid it, Shen Jilia held her hand in place. Yi Qianqian's breath stopped, and her face was burning. Shen Jilia slowly approached her with his head slightly tilted to the side. Soon he was close. Slowly, time seemed to be magnified countless times. Yi Qianqian's mind was in a daze, and she even forgot to breathe. The soft touch on her lips was even clearer and more real than before. Shen Jilia gently stuck out his tongue and quietly slid it across her lips. Yi Qianqian felt like she was struck by lightning. Suddenly, she ducked back and subconsciously pushed him away. Looking at Shen Jilia's face, Yi Qianqian gasped for breath and blinked her eyes. She was still in shock. Shen Jilia's gaze deepened. When he saw her reaction, his body slightly leaned forward. He silently approached her, but the aggressive aura of a man was extremely obvious. Yi Qianqian shrank back and stammered, Wait a minute." Shen Jilia stopped and looked at her. We're not suitable like this." "Not suitable?" Shen Jilia found it a little funny. He smiled and asked, "Why not?" "I think, However, before she could finish her sentence, Shinjilia cut her off. Shinjilia cupped her face in his hands and easily pried open her lips and teeth. He reached for her little tongue. Yi Qianqian was even more confused. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Facing the storm in front of him, he did not know how to respond. She subconsciously twisted her lips, and she could clearly feel the liquid dripping down from the corner of her lips. This was saliva. Aha! So dirty. Yi Qianqian was a little resistant, but before she knew it, she was slowly being influenced by him. His mind was in a daze, but he felt as if he was walking on air. Shinjilia suddenly pushed her away. He looked at her blushing face and asked, "Aren't you afraid of suffocating to death?" Yi Qianqian's vision darkened. When she heard that, she pushed him away, wiped her mouth and said, "You're so dirty. How dare you put saliva in my mouth?" Shinjilia burst out laughing. "It's obviously your saliva, okay? I don't even despise you, but you're the one despising me." "Bah, I'm not dirty, you are." Chapter 1668. Yi Qianqian blinked. She seemed to have a vague idea of what he was talking about. But suddenly, she didn't quite understand what he was talking about. Yi Qianqian gulped. She didn't understand what was going on. When Shinjilia saw her confused expression, he chuckled and asked, "You don't understand?" Yi Qianqian shook her head. He understood, yet he didn't. It was very contradictory, but there was indeed such a contradiction. Shinjilia stared at her. Their faces were very close together. He said, "What I mean is we can get even dirtier in the future." She instinctively covered her chest with her hands and stared at him with her eyes wide open. Shinjilia was silent for a moment when he saw her reaction. After a long time he said, "You wish." Yi Qianqian was furious. She pushed him away and shouted, "Get lost." Shinjilia laughed out loud. He loved it when she got all worked up. However, not only did Shinjilia's body not move, but he was as steady as a mountain. He reached out and grabbed her hand. He leaned over and said, "Be with me. Be my girlfriend." Yi Qianqian was at a loss for words. She struggled with her hands and stepped back. Shinjilia didn't let go of her. Instead, he pressed his body against hers and asked, "What are you trying to do?" "Bah, I should be the one asking you what you want to do. You're pressing on me. Weren't you the one who asked me to press you down? Look at how heavy you are. You almost brought me down with you." Shinjilia said indignantly. Yi Qianqian kicked him and yelled, "Get lost." "You still want to get lost?" Shinjilia's expression was one of deep guilt. "I didn't expect you to be such a person." Yi Qianqian trembled in anger at his shamelessness. She demanded, "Are you going to get lost or not?" Shinjilia seemed to be struggling for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure and said, "Since you've made such a request, then I have no choice but to." As he spoke, before Yi Qianqian could react, he released his grip on the back of her head and lifted her up. Yi Qianqian was stunned. Her hands curled up in front of her. She didn't know what to do. Only then did she react. With a red face, she dodged backwards and pushed him away, shouting, "Get lost." Shinjilia chuckled and said, "I'll carry you back to your room. You go away. Go away." Yi Qianqian was so embarrassed that she almost died. Why did it seem like she was the one begging him to *CK her? She clearly didn't mean that. Shinjilia pretended not to understand what she was saying and made to pick her up. Yi Qianqian resisted even more and shouted, "Go away. Help. You're raping me." Shinjilia replied, "You wish." Yi Qianqian felt extremely humiliated. "You." Shinjilia seemed a little helpless, but the corners of his lips curled up into a wide smile. He lowered his head and captured her lips in a deep kiss. Yi Qianqian fell silent, but her entire body tensed up. "Don't worry, unless you promise me. I won't do anything to you." "Liar. I won't. I haven't even agreed to be your girlfriend, and you've already kissed me so many times." "No? Isn't that a tacit agreement?" "I didn't." "Ugh." Yi Qianqian was suddenly assaulted again. Her eyes widened, and she stood rooted to the ground. Chapter 1669. Yi Qianqian was being carried in a princess hug again. When Yi Qianqian entered her room, she saw her 1.8-meter-long bed. Images that were not suitable for children flashed through her mind. Her face was even redder, and her heart was beating faster. Yi Qianqian's head was almost buried in her chest like an ostrich. She twisted her body uncomfortably and coughed lightly. "You put me down. I want to sleep." "Yes." Shen Jilia placed Yi Qianqian on the bed and helped her take off her shoes. Since Yi Qianqian's foot was injured, she had been wearing slippers on her way to the hospital, so it was very convenient to drag her along. After Shen Jilia put Yi Qianqian down, he pulled the blanket over her and covered her with it. His heart was itching. He did not want to leave, especially in the middle of the night. A man and a woman alone, cough cough. The thought of it made his heart itch even more. He looked at Yi Qianqian's head, which had already burrowed under the blanket, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. So she could be shy. He really couldn't tell normally. Forget it, the future is long. Shenjilia turned around and walked to the door. However, he still reluctantly turned his head to look at her and said, "Good night." As he spoke, he turned off the lights and closed the door. His footsteps gradually faded away. Yi Qianqian finally crawled out from under the covers. She glanced at the closed door and gasped for air. Only God knew that after she was covered in the quilt, her mind was filled with images that were not suitable for children. What was even more frightening was that the male and female protagonists in the scene were not suitable for children. Yi Qianqian was going crazy. She scratched her head hard. She wanted to scream, but she was afraid that Shen Jilia would laugh at her. She grabbed the blanket with both hands and twisted it violently to vent the anger in her heart. However, she felt that she couldn't vent her feelings just by pinching the blanket. Hugging the blanket, she tossed and turned. When she thought about Shen Jilia's repeated kisses, she actually was overjoyed. When Yi Qianqian heard Shen Jilia say that they could be even dirtier, she felt like she was about to explode. After preserving her virginity for so many years, was there finally a chance to give it away? But, I heard that the first time is always very painful. What if it hurts? No, that's not right. Why was she thinking about all this? She hadn't even taken a step yet. Don't think. But, I'm so happy. What should I do? Yi Qianqian hugged the blanket and couldn't help but laugh quietly. But at the same time, she felt sorry for Shen Jilia. How could he go blind at such a young age? After his shower, Shen Jilia still couldn't suppress the restlessness in his heart. He turned off all the lights and took a bottle of beer from the fridge. He sat on the balcony with his shirt off and started drinking. As the cold wine flowed down his throat, Shen Jilia's mood finally calmed down a little. Looking down, the tall buildings were brightly lit, creating a riot of colors. The breeze of the summer night was cool and comfortable. Raising his head, he saw a crescent moon in the pitch-black sky, just like Yi Qianqian's eyes. Well, the weather is good. He was in a good mood as well. Shen Jilia sat there until the latter half of the night. When he returned to his room, he couldn't fall asleep for a long time. Never in his wildest dreams had Shen Jilia imagined that he would love a woman to such an extent. When he recalled Yi Qianqian's ostrich-like reaction, he couldn't help but smile. Chapter 1670. Yu Lily's belly was getting bigger day by day, as if it was inflated with air. However, during the next checkup, the doctor warned Ming, "You must be careful. Your wife's uterus is a little thin and a little cold. You must keep the child safe. Otherwise, it will be difficult to have children in the future." The doctor's words scared Ming. He was careful every day, afraid that Yu Lily would hurt the baby if she bumped into it. Fortunately, they managed to get through the first 3 months peacefully. That day, Yu Lily slept until the sun was high up in the sky. When she came out after washing up, Ming had already returned home for lunch after working all morning. Seeing Yu Lily's sleepy look, his heart itched to go up to her and kiss her. Yu Lily was awakened by the kiss. She waved her hand and said, "Go away. I heard a big piece of news today." "What?" Yu Lily looked at him with a pair of big bright eyes. Ever since she was pregnant, Her skin seemed to be filled with water. It was very good. Oming's heart itched even more. He pulled her into the room and said, Li Jinnan is getting married. Ah. Yu Lily was surprised, but she quickly felt that she was making a fuss about nothing. She asked, Isn't he with Yi Yu a long time ago? Yeah. Oming sighed. He pressed his forehead against hers and said, But his mother didn't agree. His mother heard that Yi Yu was in prison and married, so she wouldn't let her in. Yu Lily felt a little pity when she heard that. She could understand why Li Jinnan's mother didn't agree. She suddenly thought of something and said, But the girl is pregnant. It's not right not to get married. So Li Jinnan used this as a bargaining chip with his mother. Do you know what happened to his mother? Huh? What happened? Oming asked. She cried, threw a tantrum, and threatened to hang herself. She didn't allow him to marry her. What should we do? Yi Yu is pregnant. We can't let her get an abortion, can we? Who knows what this third bro has up his sleeve? Oming smiled faintly and pushed her onto the bed. This guy looks strange, but he's full of evil tricks. When Yu Lily was pushed down, she immediately knew what he wanted to do. She struggled and said, Be careful, child. You're full of bad ideas too. How could I? My feelings for you are sincere. Oming said softly as he kissed her face. Yu Lily turned her head away. No. Your son doesn't like you. Then I don't want a son. I want a daughter. Your daughter doesn't like you either, The old residents of the Li family. Qin Shuhua sat on the sofa. Her eyes were red as she looked at the pregnancy test in her hands. Her heart was in pain. Li Jinnan and Yi Yu sat opposite her. One of them had his head lowered and didn't dare to speak. The other person was sitting upright, waiting for his mother's reaction. More than a month pregnant? Qin Shuhua asked, looking at her. After a while, Yi Yu realized that she was asking her. She immediately looked up and nodded her head. Yes, auntie. Qin Shuhua's hands trembled. She couldn't help but think back to about 2 months ago, when she had instigated Li Jinnan to say, What's done cannot be undone. She had been afraid that her son would go against human ethics and disobey her. Chapter 1671. Mom, no matter what, this is a small life. Since she's here, it means that she's fated to be with our family. If we don't keep her, we'll be committing a grave sin. Li Jinnan looked at Qin Shuhua with his dark, almond-shaped eyes. That was what Qin Shuhua was thinking, too. When she heard it out loud, it only deepened. So what if it's fated? So what if it's a grave sin? It's one thing for my daughter-in-law to be married, but she's actually been in jail? If word of this gets out, how will others view the Li family? Qin Shuhua's heart was in turmoil. Just as she was about to say something, the sound of footsteps came from behind. It was accompanied by the sound of an old man staggering with the help of a walking stick. Everyone turned to look. Old Captain Li had a head full of white hair. His face was frail, but he looked energetic. He walked over slowly. Li Jinnan quickly stood up and went forward to support him. What are you talking about? Old Captain Li walked over slowly. His old murky eyes swept over them. Qin Shuhua stood up and poured a cup of tea for old Captain Li. With reddened eyes she called out, Dad, you're here. Old Captain Li's attention was drawn to her hand. He asked, What's this? Pregnancy report. Grandpa Yu Yu is pregnant. When old Captain Li heard that, his face immediately darkened. He reached out to take it. After looking it over, he slammed the pregnancy report on the table and exclaimed, What a scandal! You're not even married yet, and you're already pregnant. Li Jinnan lowered his head and coughed. She's young after all. If I'm not careful, I might accidentally. You scoundrel. Old Captain Li clenched his teeth and raised his walking stick, as if he was about to hit him. Qin Shuhua was shocked. She quickly held him and said, Dad, don't be angry. I'll teach this kid a lesson. You should get some rest. Rest? How can I possibly rest at a time like this? Old Captain Li's face darkened. In a low voice he said, Why didn't you tell me about such an important matter? Qin Shuhua nodded her head and breathed a sigh of relief. Li Xiao hadn't expressed any opinion on the matter. If old Captain Li had known about it, he would have been the same as her, and wouldn't have allowed that woman to marry into his family. However, Before Qin Shuhua could relax, Captain Sheng's next words shattered her heart. Brat, when are you going to bring your parents to the lass's house to place the betrothal gifts? Since she's already pregnant, we can't delay this any longer. If you can wait, can your child wait? Qin Shuhua almost choked on her own saliva. When Yi Yuyu and Li Jinan heard old Captain Li's words, they couldn't help but smile. Of course. The faster the better. Grandpa, why don't you talk to my mom? She doesn't agree right now. Don't agree? As expected, the old man immediately turned his head and said, How can you not agree? She's a young lady, and she's a few years younger than your son. Do you want her to give birth to your son's child without a title? That's right. That's not good. Li Jinan said indignantly. However, as soon as he met Qin Shuhua's gaze, he immediately turned his head away. Qin Shuhua could tell that the kid was trying to use old Captain Li to intimidate her. He was using the old man to pressure her. Realizing her son's motive, Qin Shuhua was a little angry and said, Dad, you have no idea why I don't agree. Chapter 1672. Qin Shuhua hadn't expected Captain Li to already know about it. Shocked, she exclaimed in disbelief. Dad, she's been with another man. How could you? How could you be so open about it? But the girl was right in front of her, so Qin Shuhua couldn't be too direct with her words. Just as she was about to speak, she changed her mind and said, The girl isn't bad, but our Li family is innocent. The girl has a criminal record. Criminal record? Grandpa Sheng didn't know about this. He looked at Li Jinan with a serious expression. Li Jinan thought for a moment and cleared his throat to explain. It's like this. Li Jinan told the story in full detail. Captain Li was silent. Qin Shuhua had heard Li Jinan tell the story a few times, so she was unmoved. When Li Jinan saw the expression on Qin Shuhua's face, he added, In any case, the child is going to be born. Since it was all a misunderstanding, and Yu was only detained for a few days, look at how old this grandson is. If you don't want him, there will be retribution. Besides, your son is already so old. It wasn't easy for me to find someone I like. Are you willing to let me remain single again? The children of the Li family had always been virtuous. None of the three brothers were the type to fool around outside. Qin Shuhua knew that Yi Yu had gotten pregnant because her son liked her. Seeing that her son was already so old, she couldn't bear for him to be single again. But the girl's condition was really, Captain Li's expression darkened. He glared at his grandson and asked, What did your father say? Dad said to listen to grandfather, Li Jinan said. Of course. That was what Li Jinan had said himself. Li Xiao would never have said something like that. When Captain Li saw that, he knew that the kid was going to rely on himself. With a huff, he waved his hand and said, Get your father to send out the betrothal gifts. Hurry up and get married. The child can't wait. Yi Yu hadn't expected Captain Li to agree so readily. She was stunned. She looked up at him. Qin Shuhua wasn't happy and called out, Dad. Didn't you say to listen to me? Captain Li took the initiative and looked at Qin Shuhua with a straight face. Qin Shuhua's expression was ugly as she said, Dad. Old Master Li was even more displeased. Liar, it's all fake. Qin Shuhua wanted to say something else, but Li Jinan interrupted her. Li Jinan looked very happy. He smiled and said, Thank you, Grandpa. Yi Yu felt a little uneasy. She instinctively glanced at Qin Shuhua. He realized that Qin Shuhua was also looking at him with an indescribably complicated gaze. Yi Yu jumped in fright. She didn't dare to look anymore. She quickly lowered her head. Take it out, Li Jinan said softly as he looked at her. Yi Yu blinked her eyes in disbelief and replied, I don't think that's a good idea. Li Jinan immediately took matters into his own hands. He took Yi Yu's handbag over and quickly retrieved two small red booklets. The words marriage certificate were printed in gold, making Qin Shuhua stomp her feet in anger. He stood up, turned around, and walked towards his room. It was obvious that he was very unhappy. You're quite fast. The old man flipped through the marriage certificate and said, You've made your mother very angry. Chapter 1673. In the end, she still fell in love with her. Indeed, Li Jinnan's words came true. When Qin Shuhua was bedridden, Yi took care of her even though she was pregnant. Because of this, they became a complete family. Of course, that was a story for another time. Summer in Yun Town was much more pleasant than in Kingstown. Yi Qianqian stretched lazily and yawned. She dragged her slippers outside to water the plants. The flowers in the yard were in full bloom in the early morning. They were beautiful. Yi Qianqian's eyes were sleepy, and her shorts and top were wrinkled. Yi Zhenhua had just returned from outside. When he saw his daughter's lazy look, he laughed. "What are you doing? Your grandfather is going to laugh at you again." "Grandfather likes to laugh. He's not laughing at me. Don't accuse me wrongly." Yi Qianqian yawned again and said, "Dad, why are you growing so many flowers for no reason? They're not pretty, and they smell awful." "How are they not pretty? What's with that look in your eyes?" Yi Zhenhua was indignant. When Yi came back, she said they were pretty. "Look at this rose. Look at this jasmine. Look at how beautiful they are. They're not pretty, and they smell awful." Yi Qianqian waved her hand in disdain. "It's too troublesome to water them like this every day. Do you not want to water them? If not, get lost." Yi Qianqian immediately perked up. She handed the watering bottle to Yi Zhenhua and said, "Dad, your flowers are super beautiful. I'm going to play." "Hey, have you had breakfast?" "Nope." Yi Qianqian walked into her room and changed into a fresh set of clothes before skipping out the door. The air in her hometown is so fresh. She went to her best friend Fang Tongtong's place, but she was nowhere to be seen. Yi Qianqian shouted, "Big Head Tong! Big Head Tong, are you there? Big Head Tong! Big Head Tong! What are you shouting for? What are you shouting for? Wake up!" A young girl's voice came from inside. Following that, a girl walked out from inside. Fang Tongtong was Yi Qianqian's classmate. They were of the same age. But Yi Qianqian had gone to Kingstown to work, while Fang Tongtong was the classic dependent on her parents. She couldn't bear to leave her parents, so she opened a small shop in her hometown. The business wasn't good, but it was enough to earn enough money to feed herself. When Fang Tongtong saw Yi Qianqian, her face darkened. Yi Qianqian shrank back and immediately said warily, "Sir, please wait. Great hero, you've been annoyed by soul call. Hey, great hero, you're a great person, and don't hold a grudge against a lowly person like me." Fang Tongtong wanted to strangle her to death. "How dare you ask for ice cream? Go, Fang Qianqian." Fang. Yi Qianqian grabbed the most expensive popsicle and stuffed it into her mouth. When Fang Tongtong saw that, she immediately chased after her. However, Yi Qianqian had already dashed outside. She looked over with a smile and licked her ice cream contentedly. It was Fang Fang Fang. It was you Fang Ming. He Fu Ming. It was Fang Tongtong's first time seeing such a coquettish color. She watched as the car slowly headed toward her shop. It was obvious that it was a business visit. He pointed at Yi Qianqian and said, "I'll deal with you later." However, the flashy yellow car stopped, and soon, a handsome face that shone with golden light appeared. Fang Tongtong's eyes lit up. The man got out of the car. He had a tall figure and was dressed neatly. He looked immaculately dressed and had an outstanding demeanor. Fang Tongtong's eyes lit up. She felt as if her heart had been shot by Cupid. "Is this the legendary Prince Charming?" Yi Qianqian almost spat out her ice cream. She stared at the man as if she had seen a ghost. Chapter 1674. Shen Jilia was dressed in a neat and clean white shirt, which accentuated his strong and healthy body. His dark pants made his legs look especially long and slender. His hair had obviously been trimmed compared to the day before. Did this guy dress up on purpose? Where did this car come from? It's such a flashy yellow color. And the car model looks like a Maserati? Yi Qianqian's eyes widened as she looked at the car from afar. She could vaguely guess what he was here for. Why would an ordinary person come to such a remote and desolate place for no reason? He was obviously not here with good intentions. Shen Jilia did not notice Yi Qianqian, who was nibbling on her ice cream behind him. He got out of the car and glanced at the little shop before he asked, "Excuse me, do you know Yi Qianqian?" Fang Tongtong's eyes were initially shining, but when she heard his question, she was dumbfounded. Subconsciously, Fang Tongtong glanced at Yi Qianqian, who was behind him. Yi Qianqian did not hear him speak, but when she saw him look over, she immediately had an ominous feeling. "Why are you looking for Yi Qianqian?" Fang Tongtong glanced at the obviously flashy luxury car behind Shenjilia. She suddenly felt a little strange. Such a flashy car would cost at least 1 or 2 million. Did that girl Yi Qianqian hook up with a rich man? When Shenjilia saw Fang Tongtong's reaction, he knew that she definitely knew Yi Qianqian. He said, "I'm her boyfriend." D*MN, that can't be. Fang Tongtong could not believe it. Her jaw almost dropped. She looked Shenjilia up and down and said, "That can't be, handsome. Are you blind? How could you fall for someone like Yi Qianqian? F***ck, what's wrong with this world?" Fang Tongtong's voice was not soft, so Yi Qianqian heard her immediately. She was speechless and almost threw her ice cream at her. When Shenjilia heard Fang Tongtong's words, he chuckled and asked, "Do you know her?" "I don't just know her. I'm her best friend. We've been in the same boat since elementary school and university. To put it bluntly, I even know how many strands of hair she has on her body." "Nonsense. You talk too much. Why don't you F***king count for me?" Yi Qianqian couldn't take it anymore. She walked over with the ice cream in her hand. Shenjilia was surprised to see Yi Qianqian, but he quickly broke into a smile and said, "So you're here. Is he really your boyfriend?" "Yi Qianqian, that can't be. How could you not tell me about something so important?" Fang Tongtong was a little angry. She reached out and pinched Yi Qianqian on the cheek. When Yi Qianqian was pinched, she howled in pain and said, "Can't you be more like a woman? How can you get physical at the slightest disagreement?" She slapped Fang Tongtong's hand away and looked at Shenjilia. She asked, "Why are you here?" "I missed you, so I came." Shenjilia's words came from the bottom of his heart. He gazed at Yi Qianqian with eyes full of tenderness and sweetness. Yi Qianqian blushed. Before she could say anything, Fang Tongtong mocked her mercilessly. "Oh my, the sour smell of love. The single dog is still here." More importantly, her Prince Charming was a lost cause. It was said that one shouldn't tease a friend's wife, so he had no choice but to let her have this brat. Chapter 1675. Tui. Fang Tongtong, you're shameless. Are you trying to kill my man? Yi Qianqian reached out and slapped her across the face. She didn't notice that when the man behind her heard the words "my man," his eyes darkened slightly, and the corners of his mouth lifted imperceptibly. "My man," Yi Qianqian said casually. Fang Tongtong dodged with a giggle and said, "It wasn't easy for a big shot to show up. How could I turn down a business opportunity? Don't worry, the price is definitely affordable." "Go away, my father doesn't smoke, and he doesn't drink much. It's not like you don't know. Just give up." "Hey, you can't put it that way. It's your father's business whether he eats it or not, but it's your business whether you buy it or not. Am I right, young man?" Fang Tongtong tried to drum up business with a straight face, and even put on an expression that said, "I'm doing this for your own good." Then, he seemed to have thought of something and said, "I still don't know your name." "Shenjilia." Yi Qianqian answered quickly. "Oh." Fang Tongtong gave him a thumbs up with a straight face and said, "You're cultured and know the greatness of martyrs. Good name." "Shenjilia?" Uft. It was the first time Yi Qianqian had heard someone interpret it that way. She burst out laughing. Shenjilia couldn't help but laugh, revealing his pearly white teeth. Under the sunlight, it was impossible to look away. Shenjilia explained, "The Jianji means cold." "Ah, I see." Fang Tongtong nodded her head. "Then, do you want to buy cigarettes?" "Haha, give me two." Shenjilia glanced at the cigarette cabinet. "Which brand is good?" When Yi Qianqian heard that he really wanted to buy it, she slapped his hand and said, "Go away. Don't listen to her. My father doesn't smoke, but it's fine to keep a few bottles of wine at home." Your father doesn't smoke, but your man does, right? Fang Tongtong looked at Shen Jilia with anticipation. He's a doctor. Smoke my ass. Fang Tongtong's eyes lit up. Wow. I thought you were a rich second-generation heir. I didn't expect you to be a doctor. Ah, Yi Qianqian, where did you pick him up from? Why are you able to meet blind people? But I haven't met a single one. Screw you. Do you still want to do business? Give me a bottle of Moutai. Only one bottle? Of course. Give me another bottle. It's your man who's paying anyway, right, young man? Shen Jilia smiled and nodded his head. Yi Qianqian gave him a displeased look. He reached out and placed his hand on her waist to comfort her. He whispered, "It's the first time you're meeting your father. You should bring something your father likes." My dad likes flowers. Did you bring any flowers? Shen Jilia replied, Well, I really don't have that. Isn't that the end of it? Hurry back to Kingstown then. Don't see my father. My father doesn't want to see you. Yi Qianqian heaved a sigh of relief and waved her hand. You didn't even bring me flowers. What's the point of seeing him? Hey, how can you bring flowers to meet your elders? Fang Tongtong put down the 2 bottles of wine. Shen, don't listen to her. She probably doesn't want you to meet her father. She's just teasing you. Of course, Shen Jilia knew that she didn't want him to see her. His smile deepened as he said, It's fine. Since you're already here, there's no reason for me to not see you. Yes. Fang Tongtong urged with a smile. She even told Shen Jilia about Yi Jinhua's hobbies. Shen Jilia agreed with a smile. After paying the bill, he placed the wine in the car. Although it was close to home, he would be a fool not to take the car when it was available. Chapter 1676. They had only confirmed their relationship for less than half a month. Wouldn't it be too soon to meet his parents? Did you think I came here just to take my new car for a spin? Shen Jilia started the car and glanced at her with a half-smile. There was no trace of that gentle smile on his face. When she saw his true colors, Yi Qianqian snorted. She suddenly remembered and said, That's right. When did you buy that car? It's such an expensive Maserati. Your family bought it for you? Of course I bought it myself. Hey, I didn't save up all these years for nothing. Shen Jilia caressed the steering wheel lovingly and said, I've wanted to buy this car for a long time. I started ordering it before the new year, but I only managed to get my hands on it now. You must be sick in the head to buy such an expensive car. The maintenance fees for cars in the city are very high. If it gets scratched, just the cost of repainting it will cost you a lot. Yi Qianqian looked at the car logo. Although she sounded annoyed, she still felt a little smug. This was a luxury car. Maserati. When he thought of Fang Tongtong's envious and jealous gaze, he felt secretly pleased. When Shen Jilia heard Yi Qianqian's muttering, he frowned and thought about it seriously for a moment before replying, That's right. What do I do? I've already bought it. Buy it and open it. Yi Qianqian wasn't in a good mood, but she quickly said, Why didn't you tell me you were coming? It wasn't easy for me to take my annual leave to accompany my father, but you still came to scare me. Do you know that I was scared to death? I wasn't prepared at all. What are you afraid of? It's not like I'll eat your father. Turn left and stop by the tree. All right. Shen Jilia leaned over to stop, but Yi Qianqian immediately said, Forget it. Don't stop here. There are many children here. It'll be terrible if you get scratched. Shen Jilia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He replied, It's fine. No, drive inside. It's safer there. Shen Jilia had no choice but to do as he was told. He parked the car, got out, and opened the back seat door. Come and give me a hand. Shen Jilia called Yi Qianqian over. When Yi Qianqian got to the back, she was dumbfounded. There were all kinds of precious herbs and tonics, and there were 4 or 5 boxes of ginseng and lingji. There was also an expensive gift box with the words Yellow Crane Tower written on it. Yellow Crane Tower should be smoke, right? Just by looking at the packaging, one could tell that it was better than all the cigarettes sold in Fang Tongtong's shop. There was also a bottle of tonic wine. In addition to the 2 bottles he just bought from Fang Tongtong, he had a total of 3 bottles of wine. Tobacco, alcohol, and tonics were all available. Are you crazy? You bought so many things. Yi Qianqian felt her heart ache. Oh my god. You should have told me before you bought it. It's such a waste. The value of these items was not low. How much money would that cost? Her monthly salary was only a few thousand yuan. With a rough glance, she was afraid that even 2 months of her salary would not be enough to buy these things. Aren't we meeting your father now? Don't embarrass yourself. When Shen Julia saw Yi Qianqian's reaction, he hugged her with the hand that was holding the box and said, I'm going to bring his daughter home. What if I embarrass him, and he refuses to let you marry me? Yi Qianqian's face burned. She pushed him away and said, Go away. Who wants to marry you? You're shameless. If you don't marry me, who are you going to marry? Shen Julia bent over and kissed her on the cheek. Marriage is only a matter of time. Chapter 1677. But had their feelings for each other reached that point? Not at all. They had only been together for less than half a month since that night. Why did he insist on marrying her? Wait. Shen Julia was in such a hurry. Did he have something he couldn't tell her? The more Yi Qianqian thought about it, the more she felt that something was amiss. She tugged at him and said, Shen Julia. Yes. Shen Julia saw the suspicion on her face and raised his eyebrows slightly. Yi Qianqian said, I still think it's too much of a rush. Let's not go. I don't think it's a good idea. I'm already here. Shen Julia nudged her gently and said, Actually, I'm mainly here to see you. I miss you. Yi Qianqian's face burned again. She had just returned from Kingstown yesterday. It had only been less than 2 days. How could she miss him already? Since I came to see you in your hometown, your father and grandfather must be at home. How could I not bring a gift? There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. Let's go. Shen Julia turned to leave, but Yi Qianqian still felt that something was wrong. She tugged at his sleeve and said, Hey, wait a minute. I'm asking you. Shen Julia paused and raised the things in his hands helplessly. Sister, these things are very heavy. The sun is so bright. Are you trying to tire me to death? If you're tired to death at this level, then you're too useless. Yi Qianqian looked at him with disdain. She thought about it and said, Shen Julia, have you ever had a girlfriend before? How could she ask such a question at such a time? Shen Julia felt that something was wrong. He looked at Yi Qianqian and said, I'm already 27 years old. Would you believe me if I said that I've never had a girlfriend? I don't believe you. That's right. Then, did your previous girlfriends also meet their parents after half a month? Yi Qianqian's words were awkward. She was afraid that Shen Julia would hit her. Half a month. Shen Julia calculated strangely. It really was half a month. Yi Qianqian was speechless. Are you afraid that I'll go around flirting? Shen Julia chuckled and said, Don't worry. My previous girlfriends were just for fun. I had no intention of spending much time with them. Of course, I wouldn't meet their parents. What he meant was that he wanted to be with Yi Qianqian for a long time. Yi Qianqian was touched and asked, Is that so? Of course. Shen Julia glanced at her and said, Although you're not as pretty as them, and your figure isn't as good as theirs, it's still acceptable. Yi Qianqian's face darkened. She stomped her foot and gritted her teeth. Shen Julia. Cough cough. Let's go. Yi Qianqian was so angry that she twisted his hand, but she quickly stomped her feet in the direction of her home. Yi Zhenhua was playing with the old man, and the door was open. The flowers in the courtyard were in full bloom, and their fragrance wafted through the air. When Yi Zhenhua saw his daughter come back with such a big man, he was stunned for a moment and asked, Qianqian, who is this? Yi Qianqian replied angrily, I picked it up along the way. Huh. Yi Zhenhua didn't understand. Shen Julia stepped forward and said, Hello, uncle. I'm Shen Julia, Qianqian's boyfriend. Qianqian's boyfriend? Yi Zhenhua was stunned. When did Qianqian get a boyfriend? Why didn't you tell me? He asked as he looked at Yi Qianqian. I forgot. Yi Qianqian replied casually. I'll go get the tea set. Chapter 1678. When he saw the things Shenjilia was carrying, he exclaimed, "It's fine as long as you're here. Why did you bring so many things? Put them down. They're heavy. I heard that you have a grandfather, so I brought some tonics. Qianqian said that you're very good at cooking. You can make some for him when you have time." Shenjilia put down the things and said, "I didn't know what you liked, so I brought some cigarettes and alcohol." "Did you tell Qianqian before you came?" Yi Zhenhua asked in a low voice. She looked unhappy. "You must have offended her." Shenjilia felt a little embarrassed when he heard that. He thought for a moment and said, "I didn't tell her, mainly because I was afraid that she wouldn't let me come. I've wanted to visit for a long time, but I couldn't find the opportunity." Yi Zhenhua was sure that was the case. "But this girl never mentioned you to me. If you hadn't come, I wouldn't have known that my daughter had a girlfriend." Yi Zhenhua helped him put down the things and asked, "What's your name? Judging from your accent, you seem to be from the north, right?" "Uncle, my name is Shenjilia. I'm from the capital, and I'm currently working in Kingstown." When Yi Zhenhua heard that he was from the capital, his expression became a little strange. He asked, "You're from the capital?" "Yes, uncle. What kind of work are you doing?" "I'm a doctor. I'm currently the deputy director of the Department of Psychology." Yi Zhenhua nodded. He looked at Shenjilia's appearance and figure, and his frown deepened. Shenjilia looked at Yi Zhenhua's expression and asked carefully, "Uncle, if you have any questions, you can ask me directly." Yi Zhenhua hesitated for a moment before saying, "Shen, how old are you? You're such a good person." 27. 27 years old? What a promising young man. You're tall and handsome, and you're such a good person. There aren't many young people like you these days. Shenjilia was used to being praised since he was a child. When he heard Yi Zhenhua's words, he smiled and said, "You flatter me. You're such a good person. Why did you fall for our Qianqian?" Yi Zhenhua looked at Shenjilia with obvious confusion on his face. As soon as Yi Zhenhua finished speaking, Yi Qianqian's dissatisfied voice came from behind. "Daddy, what do you mean by that?" He turned around and saw Yi Qianqian carrying a freshly sterilized tea set with both hands. The coffee table was placed on the log table in the courtyard. Yi Qianqian looked at Yi Zhenhua with displeasure. Yi Zhenhua coughed softly and said, "Qianqian, didn't Daddy say that you are not good enough?" It was just that Dr. Shen's qualifications were too good. Under such a contrast, their Qianqian seemed a little ordinary. Just the fact that he was from the imperial capital was enough to make many girls break their heads to pursue him. Moreover, this young man was very good-looking. He was already a director at such a young age. If he was given a few more years, wouldn't his future be even more boundless? However, Yi Zhenhua didn't say those words aloud. Instead, he glanced at Shenjilia and said, "Why didn't you tell me that you had a boyfriend? If your boyfriend hadn't come knocking on my door, how long would you have planned to hide it from me?" Chapter 1679. When will the time be right? "You should tell Dad as soon as you have a boyfriend," Yi Zhenhua complained. As he spoke, he looked at Shenjilia. The more he looked at him, the more he found the young man to be handsome. He was handsome, with thick eyebrows and big eyes. His lips were red and his teeth were white. He had a straight nose. One look at his face, and you could tell that he was destined to be rich and powerful. But how did he end up with my daughter? That won't do. What if we break up? Yi Qianqian brewed tea. "We haven't even gotten married yet. We haven't been together for long." Yi Qianqian's words were a little direct. Shenjilia felt a little embarrassed in front of her father. He interrupted, "How can you think that way? Since I'm with you, I want to be with you. Why would we break up? Don't think too much about it." "Damn it. Can't I dislike you?" Yi Qianqian couldn't accept it. They had only been together for less than half a month, and he was already meeting her parents. What was the rush? Was he afraid that she would run away? Or was he the same way with his previous girlfriends? Every single one he caught was one. That was too much. "What do you dislike about me? I'll change, all right?" Shenjilia took a small stool and sat down beside Yi Qianqian. Yi Qianqian was holding a teacup with a pair of tongs. When she heard that, her hand suddenly trembled, and the cup almost fell. The boiling water on it spilled. Shenjilia immediately put his hand in front of Yi Qianqian and said, "Be careful." Fortunately, the boiling water didn't spill. Yi Qianqian's face gradually burned. She pushed his hand away and continued to wash the teacup. Yi Zhenhua saw it all. Shenjilia's attitude toward Yi Qianqian was very clear. From the looks of it, he was indeed treating Yi Qianqian well. "Shen, who else is there in your family?" "My parents, grandmother, and brother." "You're already 27. Your brother should be a little older than you. Is he still married?" Shenjilia was a little embarrassed. He suddenly remembered that Shen Luo's previous wife was Yi Qianqian's younger sister, and she was his biological sister. After thinking about it, he vaguely said, "Yes. They're married." "I see." Yi Zhenhua nodded and suddenly looked at Yi Qianqian. "Qianqian, what do you want for dinner?" "Anything." "What do you mean by anything?" "Anything is fine. I'm fine with anything." "What about you, Shen?" "Me too, uncle. I'm not a picky eater, but it's rare for me to be here today. Let me cook dinner." Shenjilia smiled brightly, and under the bright sunshine, he looked even more radiant. Yi Zhenhua was even more surprised. "You know how to cook? I can make some home-cooked dishes, but I don't know if they suit your taste." "No, don't do it." Yi Qianqian had a look of disdain on her face. "My dad's cooking is still the best. You make the same few dishes every day." If it's not shredded pork with garlic sauce, it's eggplant with garlic sauce. If it's not steamed eggs, it's stewed eggs with minced meat. I'm about to throw up. You're sick of eating it, but your father hasn't eaten it before. Let your father have a taste of my cooking. Otherwise, how will he know if I'll be able to take care of you in the future? Shenjilia spoke matter-of-factly. He reached out and pulled her against his chest. Yi Qianqian had a look of disdain on her face as she replied, "Come on. Do I still need you to take care of me? What else? Are you going to take care of me? You can't even take care of yourself." *T. I've survived for so many years. It's only when you appear that I can't live in peace. Dash. Chapter 1680. Yi Qianqian pushed his hand away in disgust and said, "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have fallen." If she hadn't fallen, she wouldn't have delayed her visa to Venice. Since the visa was not approved, the 5-day and 6-night ticket was equivalent to being invalidated. Yi Qianqian was so angry that she vented her anger everywhere for several days. "How can you blame me for that? I couldn't do anything about the blackout. Besides, you were the only one in there. Who knows what you were doing in there that caused you to fall?" Shenjilia had an innocent look on his face. He placed his hand across her neck and pulled her against his chest. Yi Qianqian's body appeared exceptionally petite in front of him. Even when she struggled, it was as if she was as light as a feather. "How dare you accuse me first? It was you who harassed me outside that caused me to fall. It's all your fault. You should have taken care of me later." Shenjilia felt a little helpless and said, "How could you do this to me? How could you accuse me in front of your father? Why don't you tell your father how you usually treat me? Look at my hands. They're all bruised. You were the one who pinched me. You deserve it." Yi Qianqian roared. Only then did she realize what kind of attitude she was in. Half nestled in Shenjilia's arms, she looked like a helpless little bird. She was shocked and looked at Yi Zhenhua. Yi Zhenhua's expression was a little complicated. He looked at them and asked, "Are you all living together?" "Yeah." "No." The two of them looked at Yi Zhenhua in unison. Yi Zhenhua knew that there was something going on. He snorted and asked, "How long has it been?" "It's been a while," Shenjilia said. "Bah, of course not. Dad, don't listen to him. We're living together, but it's a landlord-tenant relationship. He's in charge of cooking, and I provide him with a place to stay. That's all. You're working in Kingstown, and you're still doing this kind of shady business?" Yi Zhenhua's words made Yi Qianqian speechless. She retorted, "What do you mean by such a shady business? It's not like I'm cheating or anything. What did you eat before Shen didn't cook for you? Let's go eat outside. There's a lot of fast food there." Yi Zhenhua's face was full of dissatisfaction as he said, No wonder you've lost so much weight. You've become a little rounder recently. Little Shun's cooking skills should be pretty good. No, Dad, I'm begging you. Don't let him cook. I'm going to throw up. Yi Qianqian looked at him pitifully. Look at you. How can you let a guest cook? Of course I'll do it. Yi Zhenhua picked up his teacup and took a sip. But you guys can go grocery shopping tonight. Your grandfather and I will wait for you at home. No, it's so hot. Leave it to us, Uncle. Shen Jiliya held her in his arms and smiled brightly. Shen Jiliya chatted with Yi Zhenhua for the rest of the afternoon. Yi Qianqian hadn't expected Shen Jiliya to be so knowledgeable. When Yi Zhenhua had nothing to do, he liked to study history. Shen Jiliya had some understanding of almost every event that Yi Zhenhua talked about. The two of them felt like old friends at first sight and chatted happily. Yi Qianqian was speechless. She couldn't get a word in edgewise. They finally chatted until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Yi Qianqian said, "Let's go. Aren't we going grocery shopping? Let's go grocery shopping." Yi Zhenhua was still a little reluctant to leave, but he could tell that Yi Qianqian was bored to death. He waved his hand and said, "Go on." Now that she was free, Yi Qianqian pulled Shen Jiliya and ran out. When they were some distance away, Shen Jiliya pulled her back and kissed her on the lips. Yi Qianqian was stunned. She looked up at him. Chapter 1681. Shen Jiliya's eyes were sparkling, as if they were glistening. Under the sunlight, his eyes shone even brighter. Yi Qianqian stared at him for a moment, but she quickly averted her eyes. Her cheeks were slightly red as she replied, "Not bad. From your expression, it doesn't look like it." Shen Jiliya pulled her into an alley and asked in a low voice, "Isn't it great? TSK, how would you know such a mess of unofficial history? You even had such a good time talking to my father. I couldn't even get a word in. Didn't you say that your father likes to study history? I paid special attention to it and crammed some knowledge. I didn't expect it to really come in handy." Yi Qianqian was surprised. "When did I say that?" "You did." Shen Jiliya was very sure. "You said it the last time, and I remembered it." "Is that so? I forgot." Yi Qianqian really didn't remember, but she quickly pulled him back and said, "It's so hot. Let's go back after we buy the groceries." "What's the hurry? Wait a minute." Shen Jiliya held her hand and pulled her closer. "Kiss me. Kiss my ass. You're covered in sweat, my ass." Shen Jiliya acted as if he didn't hear her protest. He pulled her closer and kissed her on the lips. Yi Qianqian's face turned even redder. She pushed him away forcefully and said, "Go away. Kiss me again. Don't go." Yi Qianqian ignored him and turned to leave. When they arrived at the market, there weren't many people who recognized Yi Qianqian, but there were still quite a few. The place was small, and most of the people were working outside. There weren't many good-looking people in the whole year. When they saw Shen Jiliya, everyone's eyes were fixed on him. They looked at Yi Qianqian with envy and whispered, "Ah, he's so tall and handsome. He's so fair. He's practically a Prince Charming. That girl looks so familiar. Who does she look like?" Yi Qianqian and Shen Jiliya were choosing vegetables when a girl suddenly walked over and gently patted Yi Qianqian on the shoulder. Yi Qianqian turned her head and found the girl familiar, but she couldn't recognize who she was. When the girl saw Yi Qianqian's face, she exclaimed in surprise, "It's really you, Qianqian. I'm Yilin, your middle school classmate. Do you remember me?" Yi Qianqian stared at it for a long time before she vaguely remembered someone. Xia Yilin dropped out of junior high school before she even finished it. Rumor had it that she did all sorts of weird jobs and was considered a celebrity in town. Fang Tongtong often gossiped about her. A long time no see. Xia Yilin was delighted to see that she had finally remembered her. She looked at Shen Jiliya and asked, "Is this your boyfriend? Why do I remember that it wasn't him I saw last time? Did it change again?" Yi Qianqian didn't know how to react. She asked, "When have I ever brought a boyfriend home? Don't lie to me. I saw it all. The man you brought with you last time was wearing black clothes. He was tall and handsome, And he drove a black Bentley. He was awesome. With a look of envy on her face, she continued, "It must be nice to go to the big city for a few years. Even your boyfriends are so awesome. What do you do for a living? Introduce me to him." Yi Qianqian was even more baffled. What the hell? How could I have a boyfriend who drives a Bentley? Why would I change to him? Shen Zhilia felt inexplicably implicated. He looked at her with an aggrieved expression. Chapter 1682. Yi Qianqian was amused. She looked at Xia Yilin, who had inexplicably come to seek attention. She crossed her arms over her chest and said, "Why do your words sound so sour to me? What are you trying to do?" Xia Yilin hadn't expected Yi Qianqian to be so direct. Awkwardness flashed across her face as she replied, "What's there to be sour about? Aren't we all classmates? We haven't seen each other for so long, and you're doing so well now. Aren't I just envious of you?" Ouch. Yi Qianqian quickly waved her hands. Don't be envious of me. I'm not doing well either. Hey, I'm buying groceries. Let's talk later." After Yi Qianqian finished speaking, she pulled Shen Zhilia along and turned to leave. When Xia Yilin realized what was going on, she quickly chased after Yi Qianqian and yelled, "Yi Qianqian, don't tell me you're feeling guilty. Why are you running away for no reason?" Yi Qianqian was about to leave, but she stopped in her tracks. When he turned his head, he saw the smug smile on Xia Yilin's face. When Yi Qianqian saw her expression, she laughed and said, "What are you feeling guilty about? Why don't you tell me what I'm feeling guilty about?" When Xia Yilin spoke, she didn't look at Yi Qianqian. Instead, she looked at Shen Zhilia and said, "Just now you didn't dare to admit that you brought a boyfriend home. Don't tell me your boyfriend doesn't know that you brought a boyfriend home? Each boyfriend you seduce is richer than the last. What kind of tricks do you use?" The more Xia Yilin spoke, the more bitter her tone became. The surrounding people could tell that Xia Yilin was trying to stir up trouble, but no one said anything to stop her. They were happy to watch the show. Yi Qianqian suddenly burst out laughing and said, "That's right. I have my ways. I'm amazing. I can seduce men. What can you do about it?" Xia Yilin had expected that Yi Qianqian would try her best to deny it, or try to avoid the topic, and change the subject. However, she had never expected that Yi Qianqian would have such an attitude. His expression turned ugly in an instant. Xia Yilin stomped her foot in anger and exclaimed, "How can you be so shameless? How can it be that I'm shameless? Aren't you trying to frame me? Now that I've admitted it, you're saying that I'm shameless? Why are you so annoying?" Yi Qianqian had lived for a long time. She spread her hands and made an expression of disbelief at the onlookers. "Have you ever seen such a person? He's so weird." Xia Yilin was rendered speechless. She glared at Shen Zhilia angrily and said, "I'm telling the truth. She really did bring a boyfriend home in the past. It hasn't even been a few months, and she's already brought another one back. She's definitely using you as a spare tire." "That's right, that goes without saying." With her hands on her hips, Yi Qianqian looked like a shrew. "I'm so refined, cultured, and good-looking. There are so many people pursuing me that the queue would stretch from here all the way to Kingstown. What's wrong with having a few spare tires? What's wrong with that?" Yi Qianqian's words made the people around her unable to contain their laughter. Shen Zhilia was on the verge of collapsing from trying to stifle his laughter. His shoulders trembled as he pulled Yi Qianqian back. Chapter 1683. Xia Yilin was about to lose her mind when she was scolded in front of everyone. The weather was hot, and there were many people in the market. The people who came and went surrounded them. When they heard Yi Qianqian's words, they all chuckled. Xia Yilin's face turned red and purple. She stomped her feet in anger and shouted, "Yi Qianqian, don't go overboard. You think you're so great just because your boyfriend is here? Hey, you're being unreasonable. When did my boyfriend bully you? Who's as shameless as you? Why do you keep coming up to me for no reason? Let me tell you, I don't even know your surname. Who would know you? You saw that I have a handsome and rich boyfriend. So you wanted to get close to me and cheat on me, didn't you? Xia Yilan's expression turned even uglier. You what? Why don't you take a look at yourself in the mirror? My man isn't blind. Yi Qianqian sneered. She held Shenjilia's arm and said coquettishly, Darling, let's go. Let's ignore her. Shenjilia felt goosebumps rise all over his body when he heard the word darling. But it was still in public, so he had to go through with the act. Shenjilia put his arm around her and said, Yeah, let's go. Let's ignore people who are looking for trouble. Xia Yilan was furious and said, It's such a hot day. Don't you find it hot? Yi Qianqian and Shenjilia pretended not to hear her, and walked further and further away. After the main character left, the audience quickly dispersed. Along the way, Yi Qianqian bought groceries. Many people looked at her. Yi Qianqian didn't care about them. After she bought the groceries, she quickly returned home with Shenjilia. They bought a lot of groceries, and the two of them carried them home together. Of course, the bulk of it was in Shenjilia's hands. As Yi Qianqian walked, she muttered, D****. I've never met such a weirdo in my life. She caught a man with a boyfriend on the street and slandered him. She's crazy. You've really never had a boyfriend before? Shenjilia took 2 steps forward and stood in front of her to look at her expression. When Yi Qianqian heard that, she stopped in her tracks and looked at Shenjilia's face. She stomped her foot angrily and yelled, I'll pass. I'll pass. Will that do? Shenjilia quickly caught up to her and said, Hey, wait for me. Yi Qianqian stopped talking and walked faster and faster. When Shenjilia saw that she was really angry, he quickly admitted his mistake and said, I was wrong, madam. I believe you. That woman must have been lying to you. Yi Qianqian ignored him. Shenjilia stepped forward and said, My dear Qianqian, my dear wife, I was wrong. Yi Qianqian walked faster and faster, but the corners of her lips curled into a smile. In their minds, daughter-in-law equals wife. Shenjilia didn't casually address her as his wife. This was the first time he had done so. However, if she forgave him just like that, wouldn't it be too easy on him? No. Yi Qianqian still didn't look back. She even started jogging. Shenjilia had no choice but to unleash his ultimate attack. Did you think I came here just to see your father? When Yi Qianqian heard that, she stopped in her tracks. She turned around to look at Shenjilia with widened eyes and asked, What else do you want? When Shenjilia saw that Yi Qianqian had stopped, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. He caught up with her in a few steps and said, I've helped you with your visa. It's all done. Your passport is in my car. We're going to Venice the day after tomorrow. Chapter 1684. When Shenjilia heard that, he was overjoyed. Revealing a row of pearly white teeth, he said, If you knew, would it still be a surprise? Holy **T really? Yi Qianqian jumped up. Oh my god. I thought I wouldn't be able to go. Ha ha ha. When Shenjilia saw her reaction, the smile on his face deepened. He asked, Are you happy? Yi Qianqian was about to go crazy with joy. With 2 hands full of vegetables, she cupped Shenjilia's face and gave him a big kiss. She said, This is your reward. Haha, go home. After the kiss, Yi Qianqian turned around and skipped in the direction of home. Shenjilia was stunned for a moment, but he quickly smiled. Looking at her back, he laughed out loud and followed her, shouting, You're acting like a hooligan. Yi Qianqian acted as if she hadn't heard him and shouted, We're going to Venice. Shenjilia felt a little smug. It seemed that he had done the right thing. Back home, Yi Zhenhua was chatting with his grandfather. His grandfather was smiling so much that his face was wrinkled. When he saw that Yi Qianqian had returned, he said, Qianqian, you're back. Yi Qianqian was in a great mood. She giggled and said, You're back. Yo, why are you in such a good mood? Did you pick up a treasure? Yi Zhenhua stood up and took the groceries they bought. Yi Qianqian burst out laughing and exclaimed, I've picked up a treasure. Dad, I'm going back to Kingstown tomorrow. I'm going abroad the day after tomorrow. Why are you going abroad? When will you be back? I'm going on vacation. That's right. When will you be back? Yi Qianqian looked at Shenjilia. I applied for a visa for half a month, Shenjilia replied. Ah. Yi Qianqian was stunned and said, but I only have a ticket for 5 days and 6 nights. Don't tell me you didn't use that ticket and paid for it. Clearly yes. When he saw the expression on Yi Qianqian's face, he immediately changed his mind and said, there's no conflict between a visa and a tourist voucher. When Yi Qianqian heard that, she calmed down and replied, that's good. That's good. Are you guys going together? Yi Zhenhua's expression was a little strange. Yi Qianqian didn't think there was anything wrong with that. As she tidied up the table, she said, yeah, we'll be able to keep each other company. Oh, then how many rooms should I book? Yi Zhenhua asked again. When Shenjilia heard that, he immediately perked up and looked at Yi Qianqian. When Yi Qianqian heard that, she looked over. When she saw the look of anticipation on Shenjilia's face, she blushed. Very quickly, she turned her head away and said, of course I'm going to book too. We're not going to sleep together, right? Shenjilia felt Yi Zhenhua's gaze on him, and immediately nodded his head. Yes, yes. Yi Zhenhu walked towards the kitchen with the vegetables in his hand. However, his expression was somewhat indescribable. Yi Qianqian saw that Yi Zhenhua had left, and only she and Shenjilia were left in the living room. There was also an old man with dementia. This seemed a little awkward. Yi Qianqian glared at Shenjilia and said, what are you looking at? Have you never seen a beautiful woman before? Ouch. Shenjilia immediately turned his head away and covered his eyes. It stings my eyes. I can't afford to offend him. When Yi Qianqian heard that, she immediately bent down to take off her shoes. Shenjilia immediately ran off and dashed into the courtyard. When Yi Qianqian saw that, the smile on her face widened. She was in a good mood and started humming a tune. When the old man saw Yi Qianqian's reaction, he chuckled and said, Qianqian is happy today. Shenjilia is the most down-to-earth male lead I've ever written. Ha ha ha. Chapter 1685. Yi Qianqian's smile deepened as she replied, Grandpa, I'm happy. Yi Zhenhua didn't say anything when he saw that. He turned into the kitchen to cook. She didn't know what Shenjilia was doing outside, but Yi Qianqian couldn't find him. In the end, Shenjilia came out on his own with a bag in his hand. The black bag looked like it belonged to her. What's this? Something. Nonsense. Yi Qianqian rolled her eyes at him in annoyance. She reached for it and quickly fished out a passport. She rummaged through it. But before she could take anything out, Shenjilia stopped her and said, Stop looking. Go and help your father. I can't help. You go. Lazy woman. Shenjilia shoved the bag at her and turned to walk to the kitchen. Yi Qianqian made a face at him and immediately went into the room with the bag. She started rummaging through it. In the end, she found a pile of documents and a mess of certificates. Some of the names were so obscure that Yi Qianqian couldn't even understand them. She had no choice but to stuff everything back into the bag. Then she collapsed on the bed and played with her phone. She went on Baidu and found a bunch of travel guides for Venice. From accommodation to sightseeing, Yi Qianqian found everything. Yi Zhenhua quickly finished cooking, but Yi Qianqian was still playing with her phone. When she went out, Shenjilia was wearing an apron, and Yi Zhenhua was responsible for bringing the dishes out. When Yi Qianqian saw that, she had a bad feeling about this. She asked, could it be that today's dishes were made by Shenjilia? When Yi Zhenhua heard that, he smiled and praised. You don't say. Your little boyfriend's cooking is really good. It looks, smells, and tastes good. Just from the looks alone, he's much better than your father's. No matter how good he is, he can't eat it every day. Yi Qianqian's face fell. She put her phone away and went forward to look around. She quickly perked up and said, These must be made by Dad. Yi Zhenhua nodded. I made them. You're already cooked. Of course. Yi Qianqian wanted to sit down as she spoke, but Shenjilia quickly stopped her and said, Go wash your hands. Yi Qianqian pouted unhappily, but quickly headed for the kitchen. After she washed her hands, She realized that Shinjulia had put in a lot of effort that day. The taste and appearance were more than twice as good as usual. Yi Qianqian noticed the small difference and glanced at Shinjulia. Shinjulia raised his eyebrows proudly and asked, "What do you think?" "Not bad, not bad." It had been a long time since Yi Qianqian made fun of him. "You can try something new in the future." "All right." Yi Zhenhua glanced at them and chuckled. He then began to chat with Shinjulia. As he talked, he went on and on about Chiang Kai-shek during the Republic of China period. Yi Qianqian was bored out of her mind. After dinner, she chased them away from the table and went to wash the dishes. After washing the dishes, Yi Qianqian mopped the floor and cleaned the living room and kitchen. More than 2 hours had passed, and the two fellows still hadn't finished talking. Yi Qianqian took a shower and returned to her room to play with her cell phone. In her boredom, she began to watch television. Just like that, he lost track of time. It was around 1 in the morning when he felt sleepy. When he got out of bed and went out, it was already dark outside. His footsteps were light, and he could vaguely see a spark at the foot of the sofa. It was a mosquito coil. Chapter 1686. The sudden voice gave Yi Qianqian a fright. Her whole body trembled. She immediately reacted and growled in a low voice, "You scared me to death." Shinjulia turned over from the sofa. His upper body was bare, and he looked very cool. He looked at Yi Qianqian and walked toward her with the light from his phone. Yi Qianqian stomped her feet and said, "I'm going to the bathroom. I'm not going to talk to you." "Okay." Yi Qianqian felt that the atmosphere was a little strange, and she felt a little uncomfortable. The surroundings were dark, and the lights were not on. There was a faint smell of mugwort in the air. It was quite pleasant. When she heard Shinjulia's response, Yi Qianqian used the light from her phone and walked toward the bathroom. After she went to the bathroom, she walked out and saw Shinjulia sitting on a stone bench in the yard. Yi Qianqian walked toward him and sat down beside him. "Can't sleep?" "A little. Maybe a little excited." Shinjulia's voice was calm. He turned to look at Yi Qianqian. "Your father seems to like me." Yi Qianqian felt even more uncomfortable when he mentioned that. She looked away and explained, "This is the first time I've brought a boyfriend home. He would think it's good even if I brought a pig. You don't know how worried he is that I won't get married. He was so worried that he almost asked Fang Tongtong's mother to set me up on a blind date." As she spoke, she turned her head. The air in the small place was not overly polluted, and the moonlight on a summer night was especially bright. Under the hazy moonlight, Yi Qianqian clearly saw Shinjulia looking at her at that moment. Her heart skipped a beat. Yi Qianqian shrank back and coughed softly. "Fang Tongtong is the girl you saw today. She's my best friend since I was young. She's my bestie." "Yeah, I can see that you have a good relationship." "Yes, but in recent years, we've been apart more than together. If it were in the past, we could have just fought." Shinjulia's lips curled up, and he responded in a low voice. His low voice was indescribably sexy. Yi Qianqian couldn't stand it anymore. Her heart seemed to be installed with a motor. It accelerated and couldn't stop. If this continued, she was afraid that she would suddenly die. Standing up, Yi Qianqian pretended to yawn and said, "I'm tired. We'll talk tomorrow. Go to sleep." "Qianqian." "Huh." Yi Qianqian looked down at him. He suddenly reached out and squeezed her hand. It was like a feather gently stroking the bottom of his heart. Yi Qianqian's face heated up even more. She looked at him and took a step back. What was he trying to do? Could it be that he wanted to kiss her? It's so late, it's pitch black, a man and a woman alone. As Yi Qianqian's mind continued to wander, Shinjulia suddenly let go of her hand. "Good night, I'll sit a little longer." "That's it. That's it." Yi Qianqian suddenly felt unwell. That was it. Yi Qianqian heaved a sigh of relief. She didn't say a word. She turned around and strode toward her room. Damn silly man. Her footsteps were a little heavy. Shinjulia stared at her back, and the smile on his face deepened. Then she turned her head and looked at the moon above her head. Her clear eyes filled with satisfaction. Yi Qianqian had no idea that she had fallen into Shen Jilia's trap. Her heart felt empty. She lay down on the bed and pulled the blanket over her head. She stomped her foot on the bed angrily and almost went out to strangle him. Chapter 1687. However, Shen Jilia's small action caused Yi Qianqian to suffer from insomnia for most of the night. When Yi Zhenhua woke her up, she was in a daze. Qianqian, your boyfriend is still here. Get up for breakfast. Yi Qianqian covered her head and shouted, I'm not eating. I want to sleep. Yi Zhenhua heard Yi Qianqian's voice from outside and chuckled helplessly. This child is already so big, yet she's still lazing in bed. It's okay. Let her sleep. We may be returning to Kingstown in a while. Let her sleep enough so that she won't get carsick. Don't spoil her too much. I know this girl all too well. She bullies the weak and fears the strong. If you treat her well, she'll be cocky. If you treat her fiercely, I guarantee that she won't have any temper. Shen Jilia laughed. I see. I'll try it next time. When Yi Zhenhua heard that, he felt that something was wrong. Was he teaching this outsider to bully his daughter? That wouldn't do. After thinking for a moment, he said, but don't go overboard. This girl will hold a grudge. I won't give her a chance to hold a grudge. When Yi Zhenhua heard Shen Jilia's words, he was more and more satisfied with him. He smiled and lowered his head to eat. Yi Qianqian slept until noon. She didn't wake up until midnight. When she saw the time, she suddenly got up. When she went out, they were making lunch. Yi Qianqian knew that something was wrong. She sneaked into the bathroom, washed up, and went out for a walk. When she saw that she was a little more awake, she sneaked home and pretended that she had woken up long ago. Daddy, I'm back. Yi Zhenhua didn't know when she had gone out. He looked at her and asked curiously, I thought you were sleeping. Where did you go? Am I that kind of person? I went out to play. Can we eat now? Shen Jilia glanced at her and said, I saw you sneak out and come back in less than 5 minutes. Yi Qianqian said, You saw wrong. Shen Jilia's smile widened. He prepared the meal and took it out. Yeah, I saw wrong. Go wash your hands. Yi Qianqian glared at him fiercely and dawdled to wash her hands. After dinner, Shen Jilia said that he was going back to Kingstown. After Yi Qianqian bade farewell to Feng Tongtong, she instructed Shen Jilia to drive the sleazy lemon-yellow Maserati back in a flashy manner. Along the way, many people turned to look at them, especially Xia Yilin. When she saw them from afar, she gritted her teeth in anger. Yi Qianqian had slept for too long. She spent the entire 2-hour drive chatting with Shen Jilia. By the time they reached Connecticut, it was already close to evening. The two of them packed their luggage and prepared the things that needed to be prepared. Yi Qianqian was extremely excited. He only fell asleep after suffering from insomnia for most of the night. The next day, he went to the airport early in the morning. It took him 11 hours to arrive in Venice. The weather in Venice was similar to that in Kingstown. As soon as Yi Qianqian arrived, all the cells in her body became active. He carried his luggage and ran outside shouting, Hurry up, hurry up. Shen Jilia had no choice but to catch up with her. He jogged along the way and said, Slow down. What's the rush? Yi Qianqian had always yearned for this city. It was a city that was surrounded by water. It was romantic, gentle, mysterious, and magical. Chapter 1688. Yi Qianqian had been longing for such a dream for a long time. Shen Jilia knew how excited she was. He quickly stepped forward to hold her hand and said, Don't wander off. Hey, hurry up. Yi Qianqian tugged at Shen Jilia, but her grip was too steady. She couldn't move at all. Yi Qianqian tugged a few times but couldn't pull him back, so she gave up. She obediently allowed Shen Jilia to pull her out of the airport. Soon they were out of the airport. Yi Qianqian had already done a lot of research before she arrived. After looking around, she pulled Shen Jilia to the bus stop. There were many people on the water bus, so it took a long time. but it was much cheaper. On the other hand, the water taxi took less time, but it was more than 10 times more expensive. After Yi Qianqian explained it to Shenjilia, she pulled him into the bus without hesitation. After buying the ticket, Yi Qianqian chose a seat by the window and sat down. Looking outside, there were quite a lot of people. People came and went with their suitcases, and the bus was soon full. Shenjilia sat next to her and leaned over to look out. He said, "It's full of people now. You should be able to see it when we get out." "Humph." Yi Qianqian looked out and said with some satisfaction, "It's not beautiful now. It's all water. If you want to see something beautiful, you have to go to the main island. I heard that there are many beautiful women there, and it's especially fun." Shenjilia replied, "I booked a suite on the higher floor. It should be more beautiful if you look down." A suite. Yi Qianqian turned her head, but when she did, she suddenly found Shenjilia was right next to her face. When she turned her head, Shenjilia's face was inches away from hers. Yi Qianqian's heart suddenly skipped a beat, and she was momentarily stunned. Shenjilia looked at her deeply, and the corners of his lips curled up. He then gently pecked her lips and said, "Yes, a sweet." Yi Qianqian's face burned inch by inch, and she said, Why did you come so close out of nowhere? You scared me to death." Shenjilia raised his eyebrows slightly, and with his hand he said, "I think you're shy. Why is your face so red?" "Hey!" Yi Qianqian glared at him and immediately pushed him away, saying, "Go to hell. Civilization, civilization, do you understand? You can't embarrass your motherland in a foreign country." "You're right, but I'm not going to listen to you," Yi Qianqian said matter-of-factly. F*CKU. F*CKU. Go away." Shenjilia didn't know what to do with her, so he wrapped his arms around her and said, "Be quiet. Everyone's looking at us." Yi Qianqian puffed up her cheeks and looked around. When she found that a few people were looking at her, she said, "So what? Let go of me. It's so hot. Don't hug me." "It's not hot. I'm hot." Shenjilia refused to let go of her. He pointed outside and said, "Look over there." Yi Qianqian turned her head and saw a beautiful boat sailing past. It looked dreamy and romantic. It looked just like a Disney princess. Yi Qianqian's eyes lit up when she saw it. Her eyes followed him closely, as if she had completely forgotten that she was being hugged by a man. Yi Qianqian leaned against the window and looked at the blue and fresh water world outside. She felt satisfied and exclaimed, "It's great here. If we reach the main island, I'm going to rent a boat." "Renting a boat is no problem. May I ask who's going to drive it?" "Of course it's going to be you. Do you even need to ask?" Yi Qianqian said matter-of-factly. "Why else do you think I brought you out?" "Humph. So I'm here to do odd jobs for you? Take your time. I'm going to leave now." "Sure. Leave the suite behind for me. I'll stay by myself." "How can I do that? I'm still worried about you being alone." "Sigh, forget it. I'll just risk my life to accompany you." Chapter 1689. Yi Qianqian's question hit the nail on the head. Shenjilia frowned and thought for a moment before replying. "It should be." "What do you mean it should be? Don't you know how many rooms you've booked?" Yi Qianqian pinched his hand and said, "You're stuttering. Don't tell me there's only one room?" Bingo, there was indeed only one room. Looking at Yi Qianqian's expression, Shenjilia suddenly felt that he was in trouble. He thought for a moment and explained, "I didn't book only one room on purpose. After all, I'm not familiar with Venice. I have a friend who runs a tour group. He knows that I might have high standards for the environment, so he booked the best hotel in Venice for me. And it's in the best location." "Wow, really?" Yi Qianqian's eyes lit up. "Does it mean that it's especially beautiful when you look at it?" "Of course. It's beautiful." Shenjilia secretly heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Think about it. Venice is such a big city. The best place must be of a high class. It'll definitely be very comfortable." "So you only booked one room?" Wasn't he trying to divert her attention with all these twists and turns? Yi Qianqian could immediately tell what he was trying to do. Shenjilia cursed in his heart. He blinked and didn't say anything. His attitude was tantamount to tacit approval. Yi Qianqian snorted and turned her head away. She didn't say anything either, and turned her head to look out the window. Shenjilia was ready to face the storm, but Yi Qianqian's attitude seemed a little different from what he had imagined. Did she just accept the fact that there was only one room for the two of them? Shenjilia's heart was uneasy. He followed her gaze and looked out the window. It was a rare moment of silence. There were all kinds of people on the bus. Languages from different countries were mixed together, and it was very lively. When they arrived at their destination, Shenjilia used the GPS and asked for directions before they reached the hotel they had booked. It was indeed the best place in Venice. Just the grandeur of the entrance made Yi Qianqian feel very small. They showed their passports and registered their identities. Soon, they were brought to their rooms by the service staff. The so-called suite was a set of rooms. There was a bedroom, a living room, a kitchen, and a refrigerator. Yi Qianqian had never stayed in such a high-class hotel before. She casually placed her luggage in a corner and walked into the bathroom. Shenjilia glanced around. There was a sofa, a room, and a sofa inside the room. The surroundings. So, he might be destined to sleep on the sofa. He went to the room, but there was only a 2-meter-long and 2-meter-wide bed. There was no place for him at all. Shenjilia sighed. He felt that he had a bitter life. Venice, one of the most romantic places in the world. Gentle water villages, gentlemanly and romantic Italian men. This is the yearning of almost every woman. Yi Qianqian and Shenjilia rented a small boat, and the two of them leisurely shuttled through the alley. Blue water and blue sky. Faint water vapor floated in the air. It was somewhat romantic and wet. When it landed on his body, he was filled with the aura of happiness. It's so beautiful. Yi Qianqian looked at her surroundings, and her eyes were intoxicated. I love it here, Shenjilia. You like it that much? Yes, I like it. Chapter 1690. When she heard that, Yi Qianqian turned her head. Shenjilia seemed to have said it casually, and didn't look at her. When he sensed her gaze, he turned his head. Yi Qianqian pouted, and turned her head away with a look of disgust. You're so shameless. Who wants to have a wedding with you? Yi Qianqian. Yi Qianqian turned her head. What? Yi Qianqian wants to have a wedding with me. The smile on Shenjilia's face widened. There was a hint of longing on his exquisite and beautiful face. There will be such a day. The golden sunlight shone on his face, and it seemed to be plated with a layer of golden light. In the distance, the church bell rang softly and slowly. It was sacred and slow, accompanied by the pious singing of the believers. Everything was too beautiful to be true. Yi Qianqian stared at Shenjilia for a long time, and her face grew hotter and hotter. She said, It's too early to say that. It's not early. Look at how old you are. You're a 26-year-old woman, and you're still unmarried. Isn't it embarrassing? In an instant, all the good things have been fed to the dogs. Yi Qianqian clenched her fists and gritted her teeth. She turned her head and roared. Shenjilia, aren't you also 27 years old? It's not like you're walking around with 2 screaming children. What's there to be proud of? When Shenjilia saw that, he turned his head away in disgust. Screaming is for leopards and tigers. How can a human child scream like that? How uncultured. Pfft. You know so much. If you have the guts, bring me a couple. Here. Shenjilia pointed to a boat not far away. Yi Qianqian followed Shenjilia's finger, and saw a family of 3. The blonde baby was lying at the stern of the boat, and looking at the two of them. When Shenjilia pointed at him, he giggled and waved at them. Yi Qianqian was infected by his smile, and her heart softened. She said, Hello. The parents on the other side seemed to notice them. They picked up the baby, and waved at them to teach him how to speak. Yi Qianqian couldn't understand Italian at all, but when she saw them laughing, she smiled and waved at them. Do you know what they're talking about? Why are you laughing? Shenjilia leaned over, and wrapped his arm around Yi Qianqian's waist as he waved at the child. The parents looked at each other. Soon after, the husband and wife said something to each other. and then they laughed together. She turned her head to look at Shenjulia and asked, "What are they laughing at?" "They're probably laughing at us for pretending to be friendly and greeting them, even though we don't understand them." "I don't think so. I think they might think that we two Asians look good." He leaned over and called out, "Yi Qianqian. How can your skin be so thick?" Yi Qianqian glared at him and pinched his hand. "You're rebelling." "Ouch," Shenjulia wailed. "It hurts. It hurts. Serves you right." The child in front of her laughed even louder. Yi Qianqian turned her head to take a look. Feeling a little embarrassed, she shouted, "Look! The child is laughing at you." Shenjulia reached out and pulled her face toward him. He planted a kiss on her lips and said, "You're the one who's laughing." Yi Qianqian was suddenly kissed. She pushed him away and said, "We're on the street, and there are children." "It's okay. This is Italy. Children are used to it." Chapter 1691. "It's not that easy," Shenjulia said as he caught a glimpse of a charming building. He pointed to it and said, "Let's get on land." There were many unique streets in Venice. The most famous one was the shopping street. Yi Qianqian and Shenjulia shopped around. Yi Qianqian bought a few unique and beautiful things and began to feel sleepy. She looked at the time and saw that it was only 5 o'clock in the afternoon. "Shenjulia, let's go eat. We'll go back to sleep after eating." "Hungry and sleepy." Shenjulia looked at her and agreed. He took her back to the hotel. There were many good food and fun places near the hotel. After eating and drinking, Yi Qianqian had no more energy to play. She was extremely sleepy. She looked at the time. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. In other words, it was already 1 o'clock in the morning in China. She didn't sleep much on the plane. No wonder she was so sleepy. Yi Qianqian went back, found some clothes, and took a shower. Then, she lay down on the bed and ignored Shenjulia. After Shenjulia finished his shower, he looked at the sofa and then the room. He frowned deeply. He looked around and was a little hesitant. He didn't want to sleep on the sofa. It was too unfair to be a director. But if he slept in the room, would Yi Qianqian hit him when she woke up? It was fine if she hit him. But would it be awkward when they met again in the future? This Shenjulia hesitated again and again. But in the end, he didn't dare to go up. He obediently slept on the sofa in the living room. But he felt uncomfortable all over. Yi Qianqian slept until midnight and wanted to go to the bathroom. The bathroom was outside the living room, and there was no bathroom in the room. Yi Qianqian walked out and saw Shenjulia sleeping on the sofa with his legs up in the air. The temperature in the room was a little low. Shenjulia was only wearing a singlet and no quilt. His breathing was steady. Yi Qianqian shivered just walking out. What's more, Shenjulia had slept there for so long. But after looking around, she didn't find anything like a blanket. Finally, Yi Qianqian found that the air conditioning in the room could be adjusted, so she walked out with a quilt. It was the only quilt in the room, and it was big and heavy. Yi Qianqian was struggling to carry it. She walked slowly to the living room before she carried the blanket out and placed it aside. She was panting from the burden of the blanket. As expected of a 5-star hotel, even the quality of the blankets was so thick. She had been busy for half a day, but the dead man had no intention of waking up. Yi Qianqian felt a little angry. She flung the blanket and covered him with it. Shenjulia was sleeping soundly. When he was suddenly awakened, he was startled awake. Then he flipped over and almost fell down. It was only when he focused his eyes that he saw Yi Qianqian. Between him and Yi Qianqian was a huge pile of blankets. Shenjulia sat up and patted his head. What's wrong? To cover you with a blanket. Yi Qianqian's heart was filled with resentment. Do you know how heavy this blanket is? Shenjulia could feel it firsthand. He reached out and weighed it in his hand. He nodded and said, It's quite heavy. Yi Qianqian snorted and stomped back to her room. Her only blanket was gone. She had no choice but to adjust the temperature in the room to 28 degrees before lying down. Shenjulia stood outside. He looked down at the blanket and blinked. That's not right, it's really not right. If the blanket was given to her, Then what was she going to do? Chapter 1692. Yi Qianqian had just laid down when she heard a knock on the door. Shen Jiliya held a thick blanket in his arms and looked at the door. After knocking twice, he retracted his hand. What was he trying to do? She instinctively wanted to knock on the door. But what would she do after that? Just as Shen Jiliya was considering letting it go, the door to the room opened. Yi Qianqian looked at Shen Jiliya, and especially at the blanket. She blinked and asked, "What's up?" "Well, you gave me the blanket. What are you going to sleep on?" "I'll sleep on the bed. I'll just adjust the air conditioning in the room a little higher. It'll be fine." "That won't do. There's no use in raising the temperature of the air conditioning. No blanket means no blanket. What if you catch a cold when you sleep like this?" "How could I catch a cold so easily?" Yi Qianqian thought silently. When she saw Shen Jiliya's expression, she suddenly remembered the consequences of not drying her hair and catching a cold the last time. She silently swallowed the words that were on the tip of her tongue and said, "It should be fine. Won't you catch a cold easily outside?" Shen Jiliya's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly had a bold idea. He stared at her and couldn't bring himself to say it in the end. He looked down at the blanket and said, "I'm a man. It'll be fine. I'll help you put the blanket in. It's quite heavy." Yi Qianqian was speechless. What a stubborn man. She had already said that. Couldn't he just go with the flow and say something else? Why did he have to think about a blanket like that? Yi Qianqian was a little annoyed. She really wanted to break open his head to see if it was filled with glue or water. Shen Jiliya gritted his teeth and turned away. After putting the blanket on the bed, he was in no hurry to leave. He slowly unfolded the blanket and spread it again. The process took a full minute. Yi Qianqian felt a little uncomfortable. She stood by the door for a while before gently closing it. She glanced at Shen Jiliya and realized that he wasn't paying attention to her. Her heart skipped a beat. She felt guilty for doing something bad. She took a few steps forward and threw herself on the bed. Yi Qianqian lifted the blanket and crawled in. "I'm going to sleep," she said. Shen Jiliya felt a little defeated when he saw that. When he turned his head, he saw that the door had already been closed. He was stunned. Then, Shen Jiliya realized that Yi Qianqian was sleeping on the other side of the bed instead. What does that mean? The bold idea in Shen Jiliya's mind became more and more turbulent, and his heart beat faster and faster. In the end, Shen Jiliya held his breath. Slowly and stealthily, he lifted the blanket and laid down. A sense of guilt, as if he had done something wrong, instantly engulfed him. However, when he heard the soft breathing sound next to him, he felt an indescribable joy and satisfaction in his heart. He quietly moved over and got closer. Very good." Yi Qianqian did not respond. Shen Jiliya gently turned around and looked at the back of her head. He took a deep breath and clearly smelled the faint fragrance on her body. Yi Qianqian's eyes were tightly shut. When she sensed his approach, her entire body tensed up. However, when she sensed that he wasn't getting any closer, she felt a faint sense of defeat. Blockhead. Sigh. How did she end up with such a boyfriend? If she hadn't closed the door, this guy wouldn't have dared to lie down. Did he want her to take the initiative? Pooh. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.